Man, it is a rare occasion that I actually have to use that. I'm so glad everybody's enjoying themselves, meeting in person. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We are actually already in session, having just come out of closed session. For purposes of the record, Allison, can you call roll?
Here.
Ryan? Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Here. Turkey?
Here.
Walters?
Here.
Cervantes?
Here. And now if everyone can stand for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this moment, we have recognition of public comments, but we currently have none, so we'll move on to presentations to the board. And we have none. Look at this, man, we're flying, folks.
Almost finished.
All right, so next item on the agenda, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any item on the consent agenda that board members have questions about or would like removed? Allison?
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Turkey?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Next, under focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First, we have the administrative report on the curriculum. Mrs. Springer.
Good evening. I wanted to highlight a couple different pieces on my curriculum report. You'll notice we were accepted into the Amazon Future Engineers Program. Mrs. O'Reilly over at Lombard Middle School, and then Mr. Kirk Mustang GHS, both were recipients of that. We're looking forward to the 22 and 23 rollout where they add 7th and 8th grades. So we'll have a progression there. Also, we're currently planning for our letters, science and reading training coming up. We've got some facilitators within the district that we are having trained so that beyond years 1 and 2 for teacher rollout, if we have new hires, we can then train them on our own and continue that sustainability of the letters program. And you'll see those individuals. We have classroom teachers and interventionists that are joining us with the facilitator training so we can spread out that information across the district. Mr. Dave Baxter and Mr. Brad Benowitz helped with the McCrell training in connecting with our presenter. They were able to create some 6 phases of learning plans as models during our most recent training with McCrell. And then the MTSS process has been fully rolled out for K through 8. And then we are focusing on core instruction here for the rest of the year with Galesburg High School and quality instructional practices. And I'm going to turn it over here now to Mr. Powell if he wants to come up and talk about the GHS achievement data. Right here, yeah, absolutely. You actually have the report in your hands as well. I thought it would be easier for reference.
Good evening. So what you guys have is the kind of snapshot from midterm 3 that we have. One thing to note about midterm 3 is that these would just be projections of if the term ended on this day, so these things are still fluid at this point. We're talking about midterm. Include what we have for the current midterm, as well as look at just by the classes for each kid, the lunch code that the kids have, and by race, so we can see kind of some comparisons across different groups. On the other page, it just looks at the overall where they're at by the grades, midterm, look by look at all the midterms we had this year, as well as a comparison to midterm 3 of last year to midterm 3 this year. Just some kind of general highlights from some of those things from this midterm to the last midterm. The numbers are a little bit better than what they were, but still not what they were at the beginning of the year. And obviously still much worse in terms of failures looking from last year at this time to this year at this time. Obviously due in large part from the remote learning environment. You'll have the same comparisons there. You've got it by lunch code and by race for the comparison data from the past as well. You guys have any questions or?
I have 2 questions.
Yes,
One's
sir.
a statement, one's a question.
Okay.
When it says based on 4-year graduation date, so to be in that cohort for 12th grade, that's based on when they started as a freshman then?
Correct. So some kids in that class may be in Skyward if they miss some credits, they may actually be sophomores in our system, but they should be juniors.
Okay. And it'd be helpful if we can have this before the meeting, so we have a chance to review it. It's hard to make up good questions and make sure I understand it when I just am given into it as we walk in. So if we can have this at least a day or two, I know you'll be providing this every month. We have it prior to the meeting in a few days, so we can review it. Is that reasonable? Thank you.
Any other questions from board members?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on.
I have a question. Where are the areas of concern where you, using this sheet, I haven't really, I agree with Marty, I wish I could have had this before. What are the areas of concern?
As has been kind of throughout the year, as well as in years past, students from our lower socioeconomic backgrounds are really underperforming quite a lot, and that's always been a bit of a concern. And this then disproportionately impacts our students of color as well, because a lot of our students of color disproportionately come from lower income backgrounds, so we kind of have this double-edged impact, I guess, when we look into that. So that's a pretty significant one that I think is, as we try to look for solutions on how to address that, and hopefully our work with McCrell and some of the tier 1 things that Tiffany had mentioned earlier will help to get some of those things, but that's a big challenge.
I guess my question is, how many kids are not on track to graduate at this point?
If the term were to end today, or I mean, as far as midterm went, so based on that, you would have 199 students that are off track to graduate. You would have 39 in the senior class, 65, well, I say senior classes, and it's supposed to be class of 2021, 65, 2022, 67 in 2023, and 28 in 2024. But again, these numbers are subject to change because the term doesn't become official for most people. So that's where it stands as of the midterm.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
And I don't have the numbers you gave us last time on this, but if memory serves me right, our number off track went up, it did not go down, is that correct?
That is correct. I have that here in front of me, so it would have been 127 at the beginning of this term. There's a big jump from our freshmen, so term 3 would be the term that would be the first time that a new freshman student would become mathematically off track if they had extremely poor performance from their start till now. So there is a jump that is associated with that, but that doesn't represent all of it.
Thank you.
What percentage of these students that are off track are not physically in the building?
Oh, I will have to get back to you with that.
Do we know a primary cause of why these students are off track, and particularly why the sudden increase? You know, the jump from 127 to 199 is pretty substantial. You know, what's the reason for that?
This has been a tough year, so we've just seen jump after jump after jump throughout the year. So the remote learning has been very difficult for kids. Obviously not just in Galesburg, but especially, we are seeing that here in Galesburg for sure. I think the reasons vary. A lot of the students were not prepared to be independent learners, I think, with remote learning, and so that became a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of students to juggle. We had some off track before that. This is the first year that I've been able to track it this way in an effective way. So for me, it's hard for me to go back and compare what it would have looked like maybe in a normal year. But I think we've got a lot of factors, I think, that really do tie into it.
What do the teachers and you particularly need from us as the board to direct us back onto track?
We've got to come up, I think, with the current kids who are off track, we'll definitely need some creative solutions. You know, Edgenuity at the high school is one of the few things that we have to make up credits. Problem with Edgenuity is it's remote learning, it's online learning, so it's not as easy as just kind of setting up a kid in Edgenuity and they make up some credits, because there is a lot of self-directedness that, you know, our kids are kids, so they have a hard time with it sometimes.
I think the other component is that Edgenuity is one of those reactive pieces, right? It's after the failure has occurred. So more proactive measures need to take place, which is why we're focusing on tier 1 instruction, quality classroom instruction. We have teachers providing additional resources with high impact strategies that we know are proven to work, giving them that additional support to be able to implement those. The other piece is we have Mr. Thompson at the high school who's doing the executive functioning class. So he's working with just a little shy of 90 students right now in 4 different class periods, supporting their learning and helping them get on track. And my conversation with him today as well was that 30% of the students are already well on their way, and there are another 50% that are just one class shy of being fully passing their courses. So that is a proactive measure. I'd like to catch it before we get in a place where we're just reacting and getting credit recovery. I want to see the numbers decline, as does Mr. Powell and the rest of the administration. It's just providing those supports, and I don't disagree. The engagement's been a struggle this year. It's the year that we put in the most supports, and yet we're still seeing the struggle, because we do have students where I do feel school is a solid place for them to come and get the supports and get them in our classrooms to be able to support them. It's hard to get them on a computer when you're that far away to be able to engage them initially. So there are a lot of factors at play, I believe.
The number of Fs, are there any departments that it's more common for than others, or is it across? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So I would say, instead of looking at departments, it really kind of comes down to, you see a lot more concentration of your lower level required courses. So we're talking about those classes that all students have to take in the younger grades. That's where almost kind of across the board you see a lot of failures. Sometimes it ebbs and flows with different departments. A lot of our students take math, so you see a large concentration of failures in math. You see a large concentration of failures in lower grade English courses, not lower level necessarily. So like freshman, sophomore required courses, that would be things like civics, English 9, English 10, algebra 1A, pre-algebra, sometimes biology, physical science, things like classes like that.
So given some of the research that we had been given prior to COVID, we were aware already that vertically our curriculum wasn't really in line from grade to grade level moving up, and we already knew that 9th grade was a challenge when it came to math. So I guess what I would like to see are some conversations. I get COVID is hard, right? But I was just on a call the other day. The state's not foregoing testing, the state's not foregoing standards. Like they're gonna hold us accountable this year. So what can be done, right? To both acknowledge that COVID has been hard, but still try to get our students to a point where they can move forward. And then also probably account for, prior to this year, if there were any indicators that they would have been struggling anyway, right, because of what we know about math incrementally, right? We have that data, we've got that longitudinal, right? We've got all of that. So is there a way for us, because then I'm wondering if then we can project moving forward next year to catch our incoming 9th graders.
Absolutely.
So that we can try to figure out what preventative methods we can put into place so that we're kind of already addressing some of the concerns that we know exist differently. And then of course we'll have to figure out how to get our rising 10th graders where they need to be. And then of course the other concern always is our graduating seniors and whether or not, because I feel like we have time. I know it's limited, but I feel like we have time with our 9th and our 10th graders. But our juniors and seniors, how do we, knowing that programs that we do have are remote. So those are kinds of the things that are ticking through my mind as I'm reading this, right? We already know that there's a baseline that are gonna struggle.
So to that end, and to that concern, we actually are working right now, it's a host of counselors, deans, administrators, an instructional coach, working to kind of develop an MTSS process for the 912, which we're already kind of working on. We're gonna put that in front of the GHS achievement team that I've been meeting with, and Mr. Powell's been meeting with. We've already kind of got some plans to roll out some video instruction on how this works, just similar to the MTSS process at K. We did a slow rollout to then provide those resources in collaboration with coaches and teachers to provide instruction so that we can strengthen our board. I mean, because truly at the heart of it, our core needs to be solid.
Right.
So that those numbers really reflect the triangle that we should see. You know, there should be 80% of our students meeting those goals. We can see in the data that's not happening. I also think to your comment about vertical articulation, we've also seen some struggles. I would say we have more failures in math than we have in English. And I think that's a result of lack of vertical articulation over the last several years. We now have ready math, and so that we'll start seeing those gains and that change over the next 3 years, I believe, because it takes a while for us to see those substantial changes. But at the same time, we also need to reflect back on our essential skills that are already developed and where that data is showing the gaps and make sure that we're addressing those.
I'm also wondering if at some point we shouldn't, I keep using double negatives, let me rephrase. At some point, communicating with parents, I mean, when is testing happening?
It's happening in April.
Right.
And we sent something out in March 2nd.
Right, but not just communicating to our parents that the testing is happening, but that we're not being provided grace this year. Like last year, there was, the state government was understanding, this is new. State government is not understanding at this point, right? They're like, we're doing this, so
Absolutely.
kind of figure it out. So I don't know how we communicate that message to our families who are probably rightfully concerned that their child is gonna sit down for a test that they probably are well aware of that they may not be prepared for, but that our hands are tied, we don't have the ability not to set them for that test.
And the struggle that we have, I mean, it's not the only struggle, but the struggle that we do have is that the benchmark assessments that we utilize to show growth over time are also in that same window in the spring. And I have a general disdain for enacting a state test when those are the real measures I really want to see, because then I can see students, progress over time versus the one moment in time. And those are some things that we really need to stress to our parents as well.
Any other questions from board members?
I just have a comment. As I look at these numbers, there's a couple other things jump out and really alarm me. So our eyes go off track, but if you look at monitor, 1/3 of our students are either in the monitor category or off track. And then, if you break it greater, 1/3 or 10% of our 11th graders are there, 10% of our 10th graders are there, 8% of our seniors, 6.5% of our 9th graders. So, the thing that alarms me is our 12th graders are pretty, they're in their senior year, but look what's coming right behind us with 11th graders.
I agree.
So, these numbers are very alarming. And I mean, we're all in this together, but we gotta figure this one out.
I also think we need some creative strategies for engaging learners that are in our classrooms. We recognize that, I think when I did a quick math, it was like 61.5% of the students that are directly age 3, when you're looking at those numbers. There are different approaches, there are different things that come with students who are in poverty. I mean, there's a 3 million word gap by the time they're 3. We start behind the 8 ball. So we really need to have some things that are high impact to really gather, some achievement and close the gap.
Anything, I keep turning my mic off, sorry. Anything else about the achievement data? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Springer, I have one other question.
Yes.
Our multilingual learners, are we seeing any additional challenges there?
We have some support technology-wise. I mean, I think we talk about the language barrier, then we have a whole other language barrier with technology. One of the things we've been able to do is provide those supports. I think we see the same struggle that, that the other students are encountering, but we are able to meet it with some more targeted support with our EL staff. So I do see promise there. We also start testing with Access, which I'm actually encouraged by because that will give us some good data. And that will, the window actually opens March 15th, but we've yet to receive our boxes. We're hoping for them on Monday, so. Thank you.
Well, and I would like to add, a comment to something Member Phelps said. I can't agree more. I'm completely in agreement with what you're saying. We have spent the last, better part of 4 years, trying to figure out what the freshman problem is. That's been a transition issue for us. And sometimes some of these kids can get mislabeled, because you're labeled by the number of credits that you have. And so a lot of times you'll see on our enrollment report that we have a large number of freshmen. That reflects a lot of failure. Okay. And so one of the reasons that when we started doing this facility study was we realized that 7, 8, 9 area, that transition to high school was really starting to become a problem. Or had been a problem, and we really needed to do something about it. And so, Mrs. Springer and her committee that really studied this issue, I want to give a lot of credit to those folks who recognized that one of the big problems we had was we went from an 8-period day to a 4-block schedule. Neither one's good, neither one's bad. You just have to acknowledge that they're both very different from one another. And so we have all these supports in middle school where we treat kids more like elementary students than we do high school students. And then they go to high school, and not only are they basically thrown into the water, there's a completely different schedule that they're not used to, and there just weren't supports there. So over the last few years, we've not only identified, we have scheduling issues, so we're trying to rectify that with the 7-12 facility and going to a 7-period day that we think will be more conducive to helping those younger high schoolers. But also we're gonna have more counseling, have more supports for those kids. So in some ways, the solution has already been presented, and then COVID got thrown into this. And so now we got kind of a 3-year solution to this problem. So we're gonna have to look at summer school, credit recovery, some of the things that Mrs. Springer talked about with executive functioning, a lot of the things that the kids aren't turning their homework in, or just whatever it is, self-sabotage almost. And so we have a lot of work left to be done. But I guess it's a long-winded way of me saying it's not really a COVID problem. COVID kind of put it on steroids. Like, this was a problem we already had, and we'd already recognized that there were some structural changes we needed to make. And so those changes are on the way, and now we've got kind of a second layer of solution to problems that came up that nobody could have predicted. So it is everybody's problem to solve, and I believe that we have the people in place to solve those problems. But this has been maybe a decade-long problem, that we've had a lot of transition issues with those freshmen, and we saw a lot of dropouts. So we're trying to stop those dropouts as well, and so keeping those students on track is part of preventing those dropouts. And the theory being, if kids can get into high school and see some early success and not be stuck as a freshman as a 17-year-old, then they probably won't drop out. And so some of this can start to be solved long-term from some of the structural changes that we're making, but we just have to get a couple more years down the road to really enact all those goals.
I also want to go back to something that you said and take it a different route too, Dr. Asplin. I think one of the other challenges that we face, and we are not alone, and I know that there has been work done on this end too, but it goes back to the word of mislabel. And I do think that some of our children and our students are labeled very early on, and they internalize that label. And so I think we also have to make a concerted, intentional effort to focus on strength-minded approach versus deficit. And any opportunity where we hear colleagues talking about our students in a deficit mind frame, reworking that to figure out strengths-based, so that they also then have the confidence as students to build upon what they're doing And that is a shift, and that is a shift that is gonna take additional work, I recognize it. But I would like to point that out, and I can speak from personal experience, because I had a brother who was in a circumstance where, you know, he was labeled early on and it stuck with him. And instead of fighting that label, he wore it like a badge. And that impacted his high school career. So I think we need to, I think there's some work there that can also be done. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
I guess I do have one comment. I'm looking at another report. I'm not sure if this is to be discussed later in the agenda or not, but it's the February attendance report. And I can't help but notice that the high school, the number of unexcused attendance days is certainly gotta be a contributing factor to being off track.
Absolutely.
You know, the first part of any job is showing up. And I'm not I know we're doing stuff to maybe address that, but, you know, maybe that needs to be more of a priority, is, you know, doing something to get the kids there, to encourage them to be there. You know, we now have in-person learning to some extent, or at least as an option, and, you know, these numbers are, that's a lot of days.
No, you're exactly right. The best ability is availability. And we have a lot of folks that just aren't showing up. And that's, you know, once again, I'll go back to what we said all year. I credit our folks reaching out, making phone calls, personal visits, doing what we can. At some point, I hate to say it, but at some point, some of these kids have to decide they want to do it.
We have great teachers, you know, the students need to be there in the classroom to achieve success. They're not gonna achieve success by not being present.
Absolutely.
All right, next area is, or next agenda item, the special education report. Dr. Michelle?
Good evening. One thing to note is next Monday, the special ed personnel will be ready to start implementing the DLM, the Dynamic Learning Maps. That's the alternative assessment to the state testing. So we should be ready to begin testing those students.
How many students take part in that? Not all.
Approximately 52 students in the whole district.
Okay.
I believe the threshold's 5%, is that right?
1%.
Is it 1%?
It's 1%, anything over 1%, I have to report to the state why we're over 1%.
1% of special ed. Of the
1%,
special ed population.
1% of the gen ed, when you look at the gen ed population, only 1% can take DLM.
Okay.
And you get down to breaking it down by grade level when you start looking at, so that would be grades 3 through 11, similar to the gen ed counterparts. We are posting for special ed teachers to fill teachers. I believe we have one person on the board for this evening for hire, and we conducted another interview and offered, so we'll be presenting that person next month.
Any other questions for Dr. Michaud? Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding building reports from board members?
I do have one. I had a question for Mr. Hawkins, because I have the same question on the dividers and the kids carrying them with. How's that going? And what, how can we, make it better, I guess? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine.
Go
No,
up to the microphone.
I thought it was gonna be a little loud.
You probably are, but people on Zoom might not hear it.
All right, we made the decision to have our kids carry dividers just because we wanted, students to not have to worry about, just one additional thing that they were gonna, it would be theirs, and they wouldn't have to share something. Right now, we have been working with, it's been a little cumbersome with how we're getting them back, but we've been working with the staff, and we've got a new plan to where kids don't have to travel around in the morning to search for their divider. They take it to their first period the next morning. Other than that, we've limited the amount of times they go to their locker. We really try to be minimalist on what they're taking around, so on any single day, the kids are walking around with a divider, a Chromebook, maybe a notebook, and now a water bottle if they're bringing that from home. So it seems to be going very well. It's unfortunate that I've been hearing people say that it's complete chaos in the hallways, because I'm in the hallways, and I know Mr. Lingflower's in the hallways, as well as Mr. Bazon, and we don't see the chaos that everybody is reporting. So that's really unfortunate, but other than that, the kids seem to be doing well. I did have one class of kids that tried to lobby me to lobby you guys. Where they wouldn't have, they even looked up CDC data. And as far as what I was called into a class and they said the CDC said the dividers don't really do anything. I said, but it makes your mom and dad feel better, doesn't it? You know, absolutely. So we're sticking with mom and dad. That's who we need to make happy. But they seem to be going well. It's going well. At the beginning, we had teachers saying, well, you can't see through them. I actually went in the classroom, put a divider on the back table. I sat down in the kid view, was able to read everything on the screen that was through the divider. The issue is when you get multiple dividers for multiple kids. But you're having that in every classroom in our district right now. So I think they're going well. The kids are, every period, they fold them up and they take them with them. They have the suitcase handles. I appreciate the district for purchasing. Is there any other questions regarding that?
Well, I observed there the second day, I was really impressed with the idea of having the students be responsible for that, instead of having to worry if they had one in class or if they were out at lunch, because that same when they take lunch with them too. I thought it's a clever idea. Glad you did it.
Yeah, we just figure that, you know, the reason we didn't want to have the kids every period take class time, sit there and, you know, do their own divider and wait for the next kid. So they had their own divider. They're still cleaning their desk. They're still cleaning every desk and they have their own divider. But, so when they show up, the desk has already been cleaned, they put their own divider down, they take it with them.
Any other questions?
Well, in your report, you asked about the drinking fountains and after-school activities. Do we have any update on that, or?
As far as drinking fountains?
Yes, sir.
You were asked, I understand that it would see if we could, you know, open up some things, and that was one of the things kids were like, hey, can we have the drinking fountains? Because the one thing about letting kids carry their own water and bring it from home, and that's great for the kids who have that ability.
Yes.
You know, we have some parents who they're able to afford, you know, water bottles, fancy water bottles for their kids. We have a lot of kids that don't have that ability. I realize it's another touch place, something not additional to clean. You know, and at Churchill, we don't have the fancy go up and refill your water bottle kind of situation. So that was just something that we were hoping, but we also understand that if we have to make do by continue to provide, you know, kids bring water from home and we have to continue to provide, you know, water from Hy-Vee, and that's something we need to do. As far as the after-school activities, you know, it's our hope, you know, we're in the process of looking and trying to at least have track and field this year. We explored the idea of having some after-school intramurals that are like the old days. You probably remember, I do remember when there's intramurals after school. I don't want to date anybody up there, they probably experienced intramurals or anything, but.
We remember, Tom.
But the issue right now is that Churchill's gym is being used as an alternate high school site. And we also understand that, you know, the priority right now is making sure that as far as interscholastic athletics, we make sure that our high schoolers are going. So if there starts to become some gym availability, we might be rolling in some intramural type activities for our kids, making those available.
Any other additional questions about any other board report, building report? All right, enrollment report.
Okay,
see that in front of you, you know, I've said every month, you know, it's going down. Some of that, as I said last month, is attributed to the high school early graduation. It's very difficult to make any determinations right now about our enrollment, because we know some families opted to homeschool, we know some families opted to send their students to private school. We don't know if they're gonna opt to send them back next year, maybe they stay where they are, I don't know. And so it's really difficult for us to make any definite determinations, but I would say, you know, there needs to be some responsibility on my part come next, I'd say September, to start giving some definitive statements about enrollment. Given what we know now, I mean, let's hope there's no other outbreak or whatever, you know what I mean? But all facts remaining the same right now, assuming we're all going back to school next year, we will wanna take a harder look at why our numbers are decreasing the way they are. We can account for where most of the folks went, we just don't know, if some of them are coming back, but that's gonna be the next question.
And for the record, we're not the only district experiencing this. It's happening across the state.
Well, across the country, I mean, it's really, there's been a huge shift in what parents are saying that kids to school, what types of decisions they're making, and so it's gonna take a while to sort out, but, I also don't wanna downplay it to the extent of, you know, it does concern me that our enrollment is dropping. You know, I would like to think that when things go back to whatever normal is, with our new facilities, I mean, you know, being as nice as it is, when we get people in and they can see what kind of facilities they can be in, I do feel like our numbers will go back up, that's, you know, that's just an assumption at this point.
Well, and our numbers may go up, and I don't know if they're talking about this on the budget end, Mrs. Ham. But I mean, the reality is that numbers across the nation are decreasing anyway because of families getting smaller and having children later, so we're actually just seeing a decrease in children in school, and I know that from my end in working in higher ed, right? The number of graduating high schoolers.
There you go. One, it's especially acute in Illinois.
Right, it's acute in Illinois, but I mean, across, I mean, I think there's only 2 regions in the nation where we're seeing high school graduates either stay the same or increase a little bit. Otherwise, across the board, it's decreasing, and so I don't know if there's any conversations, and we don't have to talk about it now, I'm just curious about how that may be impacting budget, right? Because our new model isn't based off of students in seats every day, but it is based off of students in district. Correct?
Correct.
So to say, yes, there's an increase this year, and there's probably some way it's attributed to COVID and families making decisions that are best for them, and we may see some of those numbers come back, but the reality is, in the future, we're probably gonna be having conversations about enrollment decreasing in general because just the number of children and families, so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next, focus area 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. First under this item is the building and grounds report. I believe
We're gonna start
gonna
with some pictures.
start with Member Lyon. Yeah.
It's getting more and more exciting everywhere. We have here some pictures taken just Friday of things at our secondary campus. We see, you may remember what they looked like before. We have right here, the front office now has doorways, and you see has interior walls, and it's made a lot of progress since last month. And there's electricity in those walls too, right, Lee? Good. We're depending on it. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry, that was the first floor. This is looking down the hallway, this is in the office. First one wasn't this. More office pictures, doorways, sheetrock, walls, insulation, things are covered up more. Remember, our intention is to have students in this building next August. Right? Right. Okay. Oh, we're back to the former auditorium. Now, there's a before picture there on the left-hand side. Now, if you look on the right, that wall over to the left on the right-hand picture, that's the line where the commons will go up to that area. That's the area at the back of what had been the auditorium, underneath the balcony, which no longer exists, which will be the commons. The floor of that room will go up to the top of that wall we see on the left-hand side. So that's even with the current hallway. So it'll just seamlessly go right out to the hallway. So it all becomes part of our commons area. And the wall between the commons and the Performing Arts Center will be built starting pretty soon probably on top of that wall of concrete we see on the left. Does that make any sense? So hopefully, next time we see pictures, it won't be this huge expanse. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wasn't. It was this huge expanse. It's pretty exciting. Somewhere there's a picture of you standing there. We didn't use that picture.
No, we didn't.
Of how high that wall is to show the amount of fill that's going to go in there to bring it up to the level of the hallway. Okay, next one. There's a close-up of that same picture. There's that same wall. Will be a wall is being built there, and that will be separating the commons from the Performing Arts Center. And once again, the level of that wall, now it's on the right, that's the other direction, will be the level with the hallway. So my bet, by the time we see you all next month, it'll all be filled in. Is that possible? Yes.
Could be, yeah, put scaffolding.
Okay, all right. Now we're at the second level. This is the hallway that used to open up on the second floor. If you could look to the left off the picture, open up to the balcony, which no longer exists any longer. So this area and the area we're capturing above what had been a balcony will be the 7th and 8th grade commons area, cafeteria area. Nice windows there, and it'll have, we are gonna have a drop ceiling there, it won't be all the as high as it is, it's gonna be 12 feet or something, is that right, Louis, somewhere around there? Or 10 feet?
It's closer to 20.
No.
No, when it's finished, it'll be 20 feet? Okay. That should be sort of nice and airy and warm.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Before and after pictures at the construction going on at the far north wing of the area, what had been the area vocational center. A lot of block knocked down, it's opened up now. Now, this picture is really good because it shows you how wide that is, because in the plans we approved 3 months ago now, remember there's gonna be classrooms on the right-hand side, classrooms left-hand side, and a series of rooms down the middle with 2 hallways. And you can see how that all is gonna fit in there, because it really is a wide space. Okay. Now we missed it. Now we're across the street in the space that we're renting. And it's getting closer. There are a lot of walls built there. Hold on. Where's in the wall between? It shows what had looked like before, and you see there's permanent walls put up separating our space from their space. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, there's basically 2 sections of our area vocational centers. The large areas, which are to be divided up yet for the shop rooms, and then there's the classrooms on the right-hand side. And you see there's some windows on those classrooms on the right-hand side that open up into the other side. There's also windows that we've cut on the outside for the classrooms as well, correct? No, oh, just the end. Windows are at the end, that's right. But all the classrooms on the right-hand side will be air conditioned, while the shop area will not be. I mean, it'll be heated, but not cooled.
I'm a big fan.
Big fans, we won't tell you what kind of fans. Can't use that language in an open meeting. It's the name of the company.
It's not the brand.
Oh, we're not using that brand?
Oh, I thought we were too.
Okay. Once again, we're at the building which is coming along really nicely. And hopefully we'll have students in there. We're gonna find out yet this year. But it's coming along and there's a lot more space and a lot easier space than our current space of the rooms that we saw in one of the earlier pictures. Okay? Thank you very much. Those are updates on the construction. Then we'll move into rest of the agenda, which is sort of substantial because if you looked at your agenda, one of the items is looking at the bid documents for the completion of the Performing Arts Center and the 2 fine arts rooms. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, so in front of you, you see branding options for the 712 campus. So we've never really landed on a name. I mean, we called it junior, senior high, we called it the 712 campus, but we really, we don't have to do it this minute, but we need to at least get the conversation going. Because we need to have signage for the 7-9 entrance, and the new marquee needs to be ordered. However, we can always change the panel on those, so we don't have to panic if we land on something and we change it later. We have 3 options, but really the third one is just, you know,
It looks
it's
the
not.
same.
It's just other.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to find the difference.
It's cut and pasted, it's just like other suggestions, so don't worry about it. So, option 1, the marquee could say Galesburg Junior Senior High School. Option 2, the marquee would say Galesburg Secondary Campus. Or option 3 is other. The east entrance could say junior high entrance, it could say 7-9 entrance, or it could say something else. And then the west entrance could say GHS main entrance. It could say 10-12 entrance, or it could say other. So we really just want to kind of have a discussion about what do we think we want to do.
Others less letters.
Other. Other.
The other school,
Other high school.
other door 1, other door 2.
Right.
What are we calling Lombard? Not a junior high?
Now we're middle
Well,
school.
it really
I
shouldn't
mean,
even be that.
that was like my thing before we say the junior, senior high
It
school.
should be an intermediate school by the strict definition of what the grade bands are. It should be an intermediate school.
But what's the sign, Lombard Middle School, right?
Yeah, they ordered that
But maybe
a
that's
few
what
years
it
ago,
says.
yeah.
Just
The
says
Lombard Middle School.
says Lombard School.
Just says Lombard, doesn't say middle school.
Well, it's right there, they changed.
We ordered on purpose for not to say middle school,
It just says
thinking
Lombard.
ahead. It just says Lombard.
Okay.
So the current, like, as far as the state's concerned, it's Lombard Middle School. But really, if we're gonna do this thing appropriately, it should be intermediate school.
But we don't have to make a sign that says that.
No, I mean, we can
We
keep it
can
just as
just keep it
Lombard.
and legally just say that on
Right,
paper.
as far as the state's concerned, it probably should say.
Right.
We're not there yet, but I mean, so, I mean, once we get everything done and changed with the 7-12 and all that stuff. So, we just kinda really wanna know, what do you guys think of? We have no lead horse, we're just trying to say, what do we wanna do? What I'd not like to do is get a committee.
I like
We
option
have lots of committees, I don't wanna do that. What do you, what?
I like option 1. What don't you like, Maureen?
I think junior, senior high school is just really a dated term.
Well, I don't like
Junior makes it sound
secondary campus.
junior, I mean, like it's less important almost.
But it's not a secondary campus.
I don't like secondary campus.
It's not? What is it?
It's the primary.
Wow,
Secondary
secondary
school.
schools. Primary schools are grade schools, secondary schools are junior high and high school.
Well, I know one of the discussions that we had before was moving away from the nomenclature of high school, just for the affiliation of, you know, it being deemed a high school. And we had discussed calling it 7 through 12 campus. So that is an option, doing, instead of secondary campus, option 3 would be Galesburg 7 through 12 campus, as an option. And then you could have junior high entrance, high school, GHS/main entrance.
Now, the nice thing I can tell you is, whatever we decide on the signage, if 2 years from now we wanna change it, it's really not that big of a deal. It's just sitting on top of the building, I mean, it's not. So, yeah, we'd like to get it right the first time, but I don't want anybody to feel so special, like, oh my gosh.
We're naming this school.
I mean, it's still gonna say Galesburg, it's just Galesburg one.
So, oh, go ahead.
Obviously, we don't wanna do a committee or anything like that, but have we asked any of the people that are going to be serving at that campus, so they have any type of vested interest in buying, present them with a few options and say, hey, what do you think?
We have not. So, this is the first we've really done anything. So we're bringing it up to you first, saying, what do you wanna do? And if we want it to take longer, I know Jen's gonna throw something at me, but it's too far away.
May hit me.
Yeah,
Maybe
well,
to me.
I probably will, that's fine.
What's our deadline?
So we don't really have a deadline, so
What's Jen's deadline?
we need to have signage, if we want permanent signage, we need to have it within, what, Lee, the next month?
So then there's 2 things, there's the marquee sign, which is Jeff would work directly, and then there's the building signage. So I'd say the building signage would be nice to have in the next month, so we can get it approved in order to get it on the, really what we're talking about there is just the 7, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, just the 7, 8, or.
7, 8, 9 entry.
7, 8, 9 entry. Because right now, the plan was to keep the existing signage by the main entry as is.
The ones on the building?
The one that's already there.
So, I mean, it can be changed, but that wasn't part of the scope of the contract. So the 2 signage that is part of the scope of the contract is the current bid package, was the 7, 8, 9 entry, and the field gym entry. And the field gym entry, I think, is pretty much set, it's gonna say that. But it's the 7, 8, 9 entry, whether it's gonna be called junior high entry, or 7, 8, 9 entry, or enter here, or door B, however you want it.
The easy thing to do is just say 7, 9 entry here, then you don't have to worry about a name right now, and then you already have the name there.
But we do have to get one for the marquee,
But
and
if
the
we-
marquee is specially made.
Right.
And so, I will say that
We're buying a new marquee,
We are.
and that's in the budget already, right?
we already have marquee monies that have been set aside for a number of years that are from donations, so we're using that. But there is wiring and trenching that has to go out to where the old sign is, and they're building a new.
Before the driveway.
Correct.
Correct, so we've got some timing issues where until we can place the order, then it might not be here on time, and then the driveway may be poured, so Dr. Asplund's a lot less nervous about it than I am.
Could the marquee just say home of the Silver Streaks, and then we don't have to worry about,
Say Galesburg, home of the Silver Street?
and then we can just name the building entrances?
We can do whatever we want.
That's
like that.
clever.
I kinda like that.
Wow, I see why you're president.
Some people think so.
That's excellent.
I mean, I think that also allows us to bring in our, I don't wanna say mascot, but our team, the team name, what most people are familiar with when they think of Galesburg High School, they think of Silver Street.
And the initial design that, they showed Mr. Matthews and Mr. Houston and I was to actually then have our logo kind of cut out on top. It's really neat. And have a huge LCD screen so that we can actually, not use those plastic letters anymore that fall off and break.
Or that people purposely rearrange.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's very similar
I suggest we think about it, you show us those pictures next time, or send the pictures out and make the,
I can send them out to you and see. We did, do you have that picture, Jeff?
Oh, you mean what we gave him?
What he gave us?
No, I haven't got that.
Okay.
Well, let's get a copy of it and let's send it, you just send it to me, I'll send it to you guys, we'll look at it, I really like that idea. Yeah, Galesburg Home and Silver Street, done.
I have one every,
and we label the entrance.
And then we label the entrance, what, 7-9 entrance?
Well, and the stadium just says Galesburg Schools.
Just Galesburg.
Doesn't even say Galesburg Public
It used to
Schools
say
anymore.
Galesburg Public Schools.
Now it says Galesburg.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Just miraculously disappeared.
It just disappeared. I don't officially know that.
Okay, all right, well then we'll wait for some pictures. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Well, they had suggested that we share with some of the people who work there, maybe just get.
Jeff has a copy, too, and Tom.
Get Jeff and Tom.
Share with the staff. Ask them what they think of that.
Okay. So, I believe we're on to B.
Yes.
Do I have a motion
President, so
to?
not this, just
Oh.
one item to, add on to the building and ground committee.
Oh.
Board member Phelps had asked, at one of the previous meetings, for us to look into, the same pool, just the condition of it and what options exist. Unfortunately, don't have a lot to give you, but did wanna update you. We are working right now with an outside advisor to determine what options exist. Lee is working and trying to get all that information to see, working with the existing facility, what we can do, what type of financial impact that would have as well. So it is on the radar, it's something we're looking into, and wanted to follow up and give you that information.
Wonderful, thank you. Now, do I have a motion to consider approval of the change order request for Galesburg High School?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Pam.
Well, I'm actually gonna have Lee
All right.
come up, but we've blocked him in, so he's gonna go to.
We have pictures to show this, do you have pictures? No? I thought we
Which
said
one is
for
this,
the
the locker?
It's the
Locker
locker
rooms.
rooms.
Yes.
For the locker room.
These two.
Show us some of the pictures.
Oh, just a little bit, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so this first one is, in the original scope of the project, and Brian can jump in if I miss something, but.
Light turned on?
Yeah, see if that mic's on.
Oh, it's on.
So the original scope of the project, for the locker rooms, we really weren't doing much in that area. We're putting fire suppression in the area and the mechanical, and lighting, as you recall. Through looking at the, different items, the district asked Leggett to work up some options, and then we got pricing from contractors to, do a heavy renovation of those locker rooms to kind of bring them on par with each other. For a
When
good
you mean
area.
each other, what does that mean?
Between the boys and the girls. So, right now you're seeing the girls' side, so the big areas that are changing from the bid documents, this is the coach's office, there was a toilet in the middle, getting demoed out and getting opened up. The team room is up in the upper left, get new lockers and flooring in it. And then the space to the north is the existing showers. And I don't know if anybody's been in there, but they're the original 1950s showers. They haven't been used for quite some time. They kind of walk through. So demoing those out, making a storage room, and then actually two standalone private showers that are functional there. So that's what that side is. If you go to the next one, so this change order encompasses both those boys and girls. On the boys' side, if you go in there now, there's two small bathrooms with each a toilet and a urinal, and that's it. So that would change that into a similar toilet arrangement that the girls have. The boys already have a team room, so that doesn't change. There's a little bit of work in the offices again, to add more office space, and we'll open that up. And then the shower area gets reworked again in the storage room. So, it is a very, it's the change order amount is in front of you on the breakout with all the subs. There is a lot of demo work associated with this. It's all block and existing mortar bed. Mortar bed is concrete poured then low with mortar and then ceramic tile in all those old walk-in shower areas. And those all have to be ripped out completely and then re-put back in. Access is tough in there, so that does contribute to the cost. I know, many of you know from doing your own remodels, kitchens and bathrooms are the most expensive areas to remodel. Black rooms are a big area for that. So that is kind of the scope of the work there.
Any questions?
Lee, I don't think you had stated it, or at least I didn't hear it, but not only is it updating these facilities, but it's also making these ADA compliant as well, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the current bathrooms are not ADA compliant, and by doing this, they would all be ADA compliant, not only for the restrooms, but for the showers. So it's kind of hard to see in there, but those showers have the folding shower seats, the roll-in doors, the bathrooms all would be ADA compliant with the new sinks that are like we're putting the rest of the areas that have integrated hand washing and soap and dryers on them. And so yeah, it is. That is correct. So yeah, the ADA is a component. So I think that was on the life safety plan eventually anyway, with some of those toilets. So
The showers were.
The showers.
A life safety item that they're not functioning, but it said the valves needed to be replaced, but since they weren't functioning, they haven't been replaced, so this definitely takes care of that.
And there's enough areas, I mean, I know that, I know that we still have to designate space by gender. And also, the state of Illinois requires us to meet the needs of our trans students. So in each of these spaces, if our trans identifying students decide that they are going to use the locker room of their identity, that they have doors that shut, private space in those locker rooms to change,
So-
if that is what they desire.
Yeah, so the shower areas are more than just a shower area, it's a changing area too. So the door will be a typical toilet partition door, and then you walk in and the first 6 feet will be a changing area. There'll be a curtain, and then the next 5 feet will be a shower.
Okay.
So they can be utilized for both cases.
And the reason we're having this is the change order.
Correct.
And it's, and if you look, it's very, very expensive. But it does provide something for the district that,
Can you review the total price of the change order?
that's.
$332,922.19, the total. So the one thing I will say, you could do this, if you were gonna do this as a separate bid later, likely be more expensive because you're doing it outside of the sequence of everything, and then you're also going across finished areas. So from a timing, this is the right time to do it if you wanna do it. So yeah.
And importantly, it's bringing the facilities for the women into analogous status and comfort of what the galesburg currently have, correct? That's really important, and we are probably negligent having left it be different for too many years. But, as my colleague here to the left said, how are we paying for that? Jennifer?
All right, so fortunately, knock on wood, at this point in time, we really haven't dipped into our contingency for the high school. We had a pretty hefty contingency with taking down the walls of the auditorium. There was some potential for some structural issues, so we're at $1.4 million approximately. We're recommending that we take this out of the contingency at this point because that main part of the demo is done. We know that we're not going to have any huge structural issues.
now that we have the portion of the balcony down and we're comfortable moving forward with that level of change order, we still have a little over $1 million.
Well,
that's where
and
we're
to,
at.
and to paint even a little bit bigger story there, so when we created the contingency funds in each building, we put on a little bit tighter margins in the other buildings. Here it comes.
Maybe we need to look at a different sound system.
Yeah, now for my acoustic set. But in this one, and I believe, remember Phelps, you might have been the one that said it louder than any of us, we didn't know what we were gonna find when we started digging into that balcony. And so we put in a much larger contingency in the high school, or the 712 facility, what we need to, as opposed to Lombard or Steele or King. And for precisely the balcony reason. And so now that we have gotten past that balcony issue and we realize there's not gonna be some horrible, horrible thing, we feel comfortable dipping into the contingency that we built as a bigger percentage of the project as compared to other buildings, because we just didn't know what we were gonna find when we started peeling back the barriers. So this feels like the appropriate time to access that for this very much needed, in our opinion, project, because the showers are basically unusable. We have some equity.
So does this cover home and visiting locker rooms, so this is all the locker rooms?
Correct, yeah, so each side, the way that the toilet setup is now, or will be, is that there's an opening each side, and they share that locker space. So it would cover, you kind of have the lockers on each side, but they access the common shower and toilet area.
So Mr. Houston, you've been in the building since 1990, what?
62.
Yeah, I know, but when did you come?
90.
90, right?
2000.
The 2000. So has any appreciable work been done in the main part of either locker room in that time?
Not in the main part, no.
I'm not talking team rooms.
No.
Right.
And he's right, the showers haven't been used in years.
And the showers, have they been used since you've been here?
No, they're storage units.
Right.
I've been storage unit since I was a student there. I started, 91.
Yeah. They're storage units.
I'm looking at Mrs. Ritchie, because we graduated the same year, and she's like tilting her head like, why are you telling our age?
And this locker.
You didn't say you were in the same year though.
Hey, if I have to own it, someone's gonna own it with me.
The lockers are unusable at this point too, you know, they're just beat to heck. So.
Well, personally, I'm real glad we're doing this. I thought this was something that was long overdue. And I'm really glad that we have this contingency fund, and we didn't find anything in the auditorium to spend it on. And, yeah, it is a pretty sizable amount of money, but it's something that's long overdue.
Any other questions regarding this change order? Okay, so this item was actually set up with two pieces, the locker room change order and the drive lane length. Correct.
We've got a picture of that too, don't we, Brian?
Right, so I was just saying we need to talk about that so we can vote on the item together, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you can separate them out, but we started this one.
So we just did a quick aerial just to give you a kind of picture from last month of where the drive is entering. So your current entry down at the far east, it will be your main entry to access your new drive out front. The old or the existing entry will be abandoned, filled in, and then you'll still exit all the way down at the west. And then the little yellow dots are your 6 new lights that the change order represent, that we discussed last month.
Can you point out those dots from here?
1 there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 6 at the end.
And that dollar amount is what?
It is $39,355.
And so then, regarding the conversation we just had, where would the marquee be placed?
I think you're going back in the same
In the
place.
same
Yeah.
location, okay.
Yeah, you're right there.
So the current drive that continues off of Hawkinson is being abandoned and will grass there at the end of this project.
Correct.
Yeah,
And
I wonder
so,
what that's
and
gonna
there's
do, that
parking
stuff.
on the drive both sides, so
Both sides.
the bus lane as you come through the drop off, and then a single side parking towards the street. And these these light poles would be right over top, trying back towards the school.
Do you know how many parking spots are gonna be there on the south side?
Mm-hmm.
I know it's kind of a pop question.
41 or
but I'm just
something?
curious.
Yeah, it's 40 plus. I was gonna say 60, but
I think it's closer to 60.
I think it's closer to 60, but yeah, it fills, all this is all angled parking along the full south end.
And there's handicap parking by each entrance, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So yeah, I think when we did the original design, the light poles were a part of it, because I think the design thought was that was mostly bus drop off. But after looking at, after the fact that Lombard, it came up and King, we said, well, should we revisit the high school discussion at this point too? So that's what led us to investigate the price, the cost for this, and if we want to do it now, we could run all the conduit before the, concrete is in, so it just makes it a lot easier, so.
Any other questions?
Well, anyone that's listening, can you answer, will there be any concerns with the few houses that use this regularly? Will there be any concerns with light glowing back onto those houses at all?
The short answer is no. We're placing them on the south end and projecting the light to the north. There's also a code that doesn't allow you to spill any light over the property line. So, no.
Thank you.
Good morning.
The light to be out. Right, yeah, these would be out there on our property, yeah.
Any other questions?
The end of drive there, I know we've had this, well, just one more way of changing the whole look of the front of that building.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just for reference, you guys discussing the 712 entry is located here. So yeah, you're really making an impact across the full length of the entry. No more fighting for.
Well, and it'll have a
visitor
lot more
parking.
visitor parking, which is
Yeah.
gonna be a huge feature, because right now, that's a big detriment in our current parking situation. Visitors sometimes don't have any place to park.
Mhm.
That shouldn't be a problem, though.
And that long drive, that's gonna be for bus drop off or for, okay. When parents bring their students to school to drop off, where would they do that?
They'd be doing that at the Thiel entrance.
But there's a whole new
There's
configuration.
a whole new configuration of how they're gonna go through the parking lot. You wanna show them that, just your hand there, Brian, to remind?
We talked about coming in from the north, correct? Coming across the front of the stadium, and then there's a new configuration entry into this loop to drop off, and then come out.
Right, did the crossover, the
Did I
ones
get-
coming in?
Did I
No,
get that
they
right?
go back.
It goes back.
Oh, they
It
go
goes
back
back.
out, sorry, the loop and then you go back out and up.
Correct.
I apologize, yes.
So otherwise there'll be too much congestion
Yeah,
with the
crossing
buses trying
over.
to leave out on Fremont.
So that shouldn't pose any traffic problems, you don't anticipate.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
Shouldn't, but you're gonna ask people to come in on Dayton, and they've always used to coming in on Fremont.
There'll be some retraining.
It's a learning
No
curve.
doubt.
We are putting new curb islands in along this side here. So if they do come off Fremont, it'll separate them from the parking lot to redirect them up to that same point, so.
And there is an island going in this row here to separate those
So
people.
you physically cannot drive across the parking lot.
Oh, yes, they can.
There'll definitely be some training
Without
involved.
some
Without a
severe damage
full-
to your vehicle.
So you have to have a larger truck to go to the curbs.
And Brian, how many handicap spots are we putting, around the entrance of Thiel?
I'll have to look back, but I wanna say a dozen are fitting in this area adjacent, so this new circle drive is gonna be reworked with parking.
Busy summer here.
Yes.
This is all gonna be ready by the fall, correct?
All of what we just discussed.
Right.
Yes.
Not the next bid package.
Any other additional questions? somewhat confused faces in the audience. I'm sure some of your questions will be answered as we move forward. All right, if there's no other questions,
We have a motion in a second.
Allison.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Sherman?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Surratt?
Aye.
Hogan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
All right, next up, we have the ESSER2 discussion, which is just shorthand for federal monies.
Correct. It stands for Elementary Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Act 2. So, the federal government passed ESSER 1 funds back last spring, and the district received approximately $1.5 million, which we put the majority of that into updating our technology. As part of the second COVID relief package that just passed in Washington DC, the district is looking at getting approximately $6,089,000.
Just passed it.
I'm sorry?
It hasn't passed yet.
No, this is the one that, yeah.
He's still
It
reconciling.
passed.
The ESSER part passed.
Yes, we've heard-
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So we have $6,089,000, which is wonderful. There are very, specific things that this money can go towards, and it's basically the prevention, or response to COVID, which it can, in theory, go towards salaries, it can go towards PPE, it can go towards construction that is going to be constructing, additions to buildings that help to create social distancing. We can't use it for the PE area, but we can use it for some other areas. So we're looking at, once our bids come in for the new band and choir area, we'll be able to potentially write that into our grant. We're looking at some renovations to Area J, which is the area around, the library. So that counselor's pod area turns into a couple different classrooms. We have to rework the library. So these are all things that we could write into the ESSER 2 grant. I sat through a webinar last week, and there was a lot of discussion about salaries. Can we put salaries into this grant? And the answer is yes, we can put salaries into it. The money has to be expended by September 30th of 2023, which gives us quite some time to do that. The problem with putting salaries into this grant is that, in essence, once you put salaries into there, you can never put those salaries into a federal grant ever again. So it is considered supplanting. So that is very concerning to us, because if we put interventionists, if we put title staff into that, deans, social emotional support personnel, all of those individuals would never be able to be put into a Title I, Title II, Title IV grant ever again. The other disadvantage is that we have to pay federal TRS on those salaries, which is 10.14%. So we would be looking at $600,000 going just to federal TRS from that allocation. So when looking at this, to us, it seemed that the best course of action was to primarily use this money towards our construction. Because we are creating larger, more socially distant spaces, we can add things in, and we're gonna be talking about it in a little while, our furniture package, when we get those bids in, because we're purchasing everything that's flexible, mobile, can be used in separate individual seating areas, as well as combined in group work, which was one of the requests when we did the survey. Like I said, the band and choir room. Lee and I are going to meet on April 8th to review all the bids and to review what we have and what would qualify under this ESSER 2 qualification, and basically develop our budget at that point. So we have to have our budget done by June 30th. But that is going to be our primary use, primary focus of the money, just because we don't want to get into a position where we can't ever put these individual salaries into grants in the future. That would be really detrimental. Does anyone have any questions?
All of this money is for projects moving forward.
No, it actually can be backdated to March 13th of 2020. So any expenditure that's been incurred since March 13th. So we need to focus though on projects that have been approved after March 13th, 2020, because that was initially, we thought we could
potentially look at some of our projects that we did at our elementaries this summer, but all of those were approved, you know, a year before that, so.
So does like ventilation fall under this?
Mhm.
So could any of our work in that area?
Yes,
be-
absolutely, and that's gonna be one of the things we'll be targeting. We have to be careful that we do have some dedicated funds, from health, life, safety work, so the boilers and the univents.
Themselves couldn't be used.
But the okay, hello, but the HVAC chiller units could, so we just have to make sure that we're not commingling funds. And so that's what we're gonna be working on here in a couple weeks.
That's good news.
Would the ventilation that's necessary at the pool fall into that?
The pool,
The ventilation necessary?
I don't think so, because it's not, right, it's not going to, increase for like social distancing or
Okay,
fresh air.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
but we can transfer some money that we're not spending elsewhere.
Absolutely. So, obviously, it's a wonderful thing for us to be able to get this money. We wanted to put this on for a discussion, just because at some later date, we'll be asking you to approve some expenditures and some budgets, and we want everybody to kind of understand complete transparency, how we're trying to look at this. Because you could look at it one way and go, well, it'd be really easy to put these numbers in here, but there's long-term ramifications for that that aren't widely known. So it's important for us not to just like, as Tiana said, just put nurses in there. Oh, okay, then, well, now we can never use any other funds to put for the nurses. So long-term, that's not really a good decision, even though if you're just worried about right now, that seems like an easy one. But we just want people to understand why we might be looking at spending the money a certain way.
And tonight, we're actually going to ask that you approve, some Chromebook purchases, because we need to purchase some additional Chromebooks for the high school. That will go in the ESSER two money. We don't have to worry about that. You can't supplant technology. So we are going to be doing some instructional items like that, but, it's $6 million is a lot of money to spend. So we're fortunate that we're in the midst of these construction projects at the high school and can offset some of those costs.
How would this impact the budget of the projects we have going if we were able to apply that money to some of, like, the mechanical and furniture and things of that nature?
So I'll be amending the budget, and so we did have some other dollars in other parts of the budget, from EDF spending that we've applied towards the project. So what we'll be doing is, once we amend the budget, we'll be transferring those EDF dollars back to either education, transportation, O&M. And so those will be going back into other funds at that point.
So it's not necessarily that other funds will become available to apply to the project?
Correct. We're just gonna be transferring back out, so. Once something goes into capital projects, you can't transfer it back into the other big three funds. So this actually happened at a really opportune time, because we can amend the budget for this year. Had this money come out after July 1, and we had already put those EDF dollars into Fund 60, they'd be kind of stuck there in essence. So it's really good timing that we can amend the budget and make those transfers before the end of the year. And that'll come to you, the amended budget will come for review in May, and then you'll approve it in June.
Maureen?
Okay?
Well, that's great news.
Yeah.
And a good time.
Any other questions? Sorry, I'm making note, amended budget presentation in May and vote in June, is that what you said?
Right, we'll vote on the amended, or you'll vote on the amended budget in June.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
And I will say that there are going to be a lot of changes this year. You know, usually our amended budget doesn't change substantially. We did very much a worst-case scenario budget this year, not knowing if the state was going to be able to pay its bills, if we were going to be getting revenues. Fortunately, a lot of those things have not come to fruition. So, you know, we're going to be able to have a much better picture, for you in May.
And does this mean that we'll have some money in reserves, because this year might be okay, but next year might not?
Absolutely, and that's what,
appropriate some money to take care
Took
of
away
this.
one of my comments.
Apparently it's much more urgent than we thought it was.
Yeah. I like don't put any money into our offices, but yes, maybe we need to look at that. I'm sorry, Member Cervantes. What did you ask me for the sound
Reserves
system?
for this year,
Reserves
because
for
next
this
year.
year, because next year.
Correct.
The outlook may be different, because for people who are, may or may not have paid attention to the state budget, our funding for education is stayed level, so there was no additional monies included into the tier funding. So it was just the base 350 million, yeah, right, 350 million that's divvied up amongst all of the districts in the state of Illinois. They did not approve additional funding to be put in to help us with our tier funding to meet adequacy. It's a long explanation. I'm happy to talk to anybody who's interested in knowing how our new funding model in the state of Illinois works. But so while it was able to stay at that level this year, we do not know what's gonna happen next year.
Correct. And we will have been flat funded now for 2 years, so last year and then this coming fiscal year. We have seen an initial reduction in our Title I and Title II and Title IV allocations. Those are projected allocations, so, you know, we've lost approximately $500,000 over the last 4 years in title funding. So we are gonna see decreases in other areas, and you're exactly right. You know, it may look like, oh, we have this money now, but we've gotta save that for rainy days that are definitely coming, because if you look at the trends of what happened with the recession of 2008, we did not start to really feel that until 2011, 2012, and then it got really bad in 2014. And then, you know, unfortunately, Member Cervantes remembers then what we had to do in 2015 and 2016. So we want to avoid that, so we definitely need this rainy day fund, and this will help to build that.
And for the record, it's not stopping the state from continuing to pass other things that we are required to do within this evidence-based funding model.
Which is against their own law that they passed 3 years ago.
I know, it is, but they're within one of the most recent state bills that was passed, there are some adequacy measure questions related to, equity and inclusion that are being added into the model in different ways, and that will start to affect where districts can also need to spend their money and place staffing. So there's suffices to say there are some things down the road that we also as a board need to be aware of and building in, and it's not just woohoo, it's raining dollars. Okay, next, do I have a motion to consider approval of the phase 3 bid documents?
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Ham, are you starting this conversation?
Well, Lee and Brian are going to be talking about phase 3 documents. I think we've got some pictures that we wanna show.
Phase 3, just to remind people, it's the Performing Arts Center, what had been it's the stage and the area where the seats are gonna go, and then a new chorus room and a band room, band and choir room, and the hallway connecting them all. Right, and a storeroom behind the auditorium.
Correct.
Go for it, guys. Ooh, look at that.
So that is correct. So everything from the back wall auditorium, which you presented earlier, to the west is being bid in phase 3. In addition to that, we are bidding the corridor connection and the band and choir addition in the front of the building. So this is a perspective looking at the current front entry. You can kind of see the slope in the front that we have to adjust around because the floor level of band and choir will be at -3'6", which levels up to the stage. The next image of the floor plan that we went over last month kind of shows the connection between the back of the stage and the new storage room, and then the connection to the corridor that links into the band and choir. So these documents are prepared and ready, and we're here to answer any
further questions on the scope of work for phase 3.
Yeah, what's the square footage you're adding then of each of those new?
We're at 18,000, is that right?
This area?
Yeah, the band and the choir rooms, how many?
About 9,000 square feet.
9,000, yeah.
Each?
In the hallway.
No, the total.
Total, okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, 9,000.
Give you a perspective, I think the area A addition is about 18,000.
Or half that.
Half of that, but it's
Yeah.
a handful of rooms, so they're pretty.
The band room is right around 2,750, choir room is 1,750, which is both plus or minus 250 square feet larger than what they have now. And it won't be tiered, so it'll be more useful throughout. Auditorium seat count, I figured that would be a question. Told you this earlier, 621 fixed seats and a total of 633 with with handicap seating and fill-in chairs if necessary. So you can max out at 633.
Do you have a picture of the inside of the performing arts center?
Brian, is that including the additional row that was added with
That
the
is.
change to the front?
Yeah, that bumped it up to 633. Did I send you the floor plan with the 3 images on the right-hand side?
It's on page 270.
It's the same image we presented, yeah, this one, that we presented last month. We added an additional image of the 7th, 8th grade cafeteria upstairs, so that's a perspective of them, windows
Make that
up
a little
there,
larger?
looking
No?
over
Sorry.
top. And I apologize, this floor plan is a little outdated. So the one main change we made in the last couple of weeks after getting feedback from the end users and at the previous board meeting is this storage room increased a couple hundred square feet. And this double door changed to an overhead door. And then this became one large room instead of a corridor so that they can use that back of stage for storing either the piano or the band shell or whatever they need to get off stage. It'll be much easier with an overhead door than a pair of double doors. So that is the one change that isn't represented.
But most students going to either band and choir will come down, the door is where, coming off the commons area?
So, well, the majority, if you're having a band concert, you'll most
No, I
likely
meant,
come from
if
the
someone's going to class. Going to class.
Going to class.
Yeah,
and then-
10th graders go in the band.
Gotcha. So they'll come right next to the main entry, which is adjacent to the cafeteria. These 2 windows, it actually showed up in your picture earlier, the 2 big cutouts that are now there, that's the corridor connection to the band and choir.
And then, want to explain what's in between the band and choir rooms?
Yeah, so it's a shared storage room. On the north wall is all the music storage, so it's a high density storage units to store all the sheet music. On the opposite side, it's open for low push-in equipment or band equipment that they need to move on carts. Above that will be a 3-tier system of hanging garments or hat boxes. There's lots of wardrobe units that need to be hung up. 2 practice rooms, and then 2 offices. Opposite of the corridor is another long storage closet that also can be used for miscellaneous chairs, garments. It'll have hanging racks in there also for more garments for band and choir. And then we have a smaller storage room adjacent to the auditorium that will be used for miscellaneous.
And the main entrance to the Performing Arts Center is where exactly?
So it's in the center of the cafeteria. There'll be 2 entries. You'll come in around the control booth. The control booth will be central to the auditorium. And then from there, there's tiered seating in this back area. So if you were standing on the wall earlier, you're roughly, it goes up 2 tiers from there, 14 inches, and then everything will step down and tier to a mid-level, and then it'll further slope to the stage.
You want to explain the control room a little bit? I think it's sort of neat.
I can, yeah. The control booth is actually 3 levels.
So the first level is where almost everything will happen, for audio and visual, and they'll run all the mechanics from that first level. There's a spiral staircase in there that leads to the second level, which is the projection booth. There'll be windows up there, and also, a large projector, large throw projector that'll project on a screen that comes down from the proscenium opening. And then that will have a spiral staircase to lead up to the third level, which will be your spot booth, where all your two spotlights will go at the top. From there will be a ship's ladder that will lead up to the catwalk, which you can access, your light cove up in the catwalk. So it is quite complicated, but each level has its function, its footprint, its function. Catwalk will be a little bit more accessible. It'll definitely be safe because it'll have handrails on it this time around.
Brian, can you explain what the bottom picture is to, please?
Yeah, so this bottom picture, so between, the middle picture and the bottom picture, the middle picture is a 10-12. So this is your entry. There's a wood wall on the west side for the entry of the auditorium. This is 10-11-12 for cafeteria. And then upstairs, some of those photographs earlier, this is the 7th to 8th grade cafeteria. You can kind of see far in this corner, this is where the new openings are in the existing auditorium walls. And then we have glass basically starting from 3 foot up. You asked about the ceiling earlier. You can kind of see it in the corner here. It's going to be a pretty tall volume here for 7th and 8th grade. It's going to be a really nice cafeteria space for them.
So those look into the auditorium?
So these look into below this floor level. So if you look here, these windows are the same ones up here. So this is second floor, first floor.
So the really nice part of that additional cafeteria, one of the common concerns we heard from parents early on at the 7-12 facility discussions was, are we gonna have 7th graders and 12th graders? Well, now, Brian's done a really good job of figuring out how to separate the classrooms so the 7th and 8th graders are basically upstairs. Well, now we've got a cafeteria upstairs too, so we've kept those students' age bands apart. And then second of all, we've also made it so that there's more cafeteria space so we can go from what we were gonna have to run 4 lunches down to 3, which may not sound like a big deal, but it actually is, because we won't have to start lunch until actual lunchtime. Whereas before we were gonna have to start the first lunch at like 10:50, whereas now we're about 11:30 when we start, 11:20 when we start our first lunch. So, and the lunch period will be the same top and bottom floor, so you can run the same schedule. And it gives us that much more flexibility, so, our junior high kids can still stay on the schedule of the 9-12, and if we have advanced students, that lunch isn't gonna be a barrier to getting kids in the schedules throughout the facility.
So with that, there's probably questions on serving lines. And in this bid package 3, we are adding 2 serving lines to the upper floors. And what will happen is the production kitchen will still produce everything. They'll go on carts, similar to what's being done in the servery, but use the elevator, bring it up, and they'll have everything right there for 7th and 8th grade for serving upstairs. So they don't have to walk downstairs, get their meals, and then come upstairs. Everything will be right there. We'll have cart return for their trays. That is also in phase 3.
And to add to another part of a discussion from early on, Member Lyons said it best, he kept referring to the fact that we had the west third of our building we used like 5% of the time. Well, now we're using that part of the building almost 100% of the time, so we're really maximizing the space in the building.
And then the last and final component of phase 3, I know there's a lot, we are replacing some glazing around the building. I think we talked about that last month. We're trying to get rid of all the single pane glazing in the building to bring everything up to have some energy efficient glazing throughout the building. That'll help with your new mechanical system too. You won't be wasting that.
And also have a unified look on the front of the building, where right now we have the brown gold on the east side and the silver on the west side. It would all look like the silver.
And air conditioners hanging out of the window.
And those are gone. So, yeah,
For a while.
another added bonus.
Any other questions?
So now, right now, we need to cross our fingers that the bids come as well as the last bid packet, right?
Well, they're definitely not gonna come in 4 million under, but.
Yeah, because the whole project's 5.5.
Yes. So, yes, that is the target, correct? We're at 4.95 all in? Yeah. And there's some contingency built into that also, so we're not overlooking that. We are considering the soil in the front, they're not as good as the ones in the back, so some of that contingency and allowance money will help pay for that, but we are taking those steps here.
Real exciting.
So, this goes back to the new drive. We've got some nice trees and aesthetics in the front. What's gonna happen there?
So you are gonna lose the one tree in front of the auditorium where the addition's going. There's one or two trees that might be lost with the new parking, but I think everything else is outside that footprint of the parking. So I think we can maintain the majority of them. Definitely the one in the auditorium is gonna have to be removed. And I believe there is one or two that fall in that footprint, but not all of them.
So we do get this one. The only one I know for sure that we have to take out, that one of the auditorium.
Yeah, that one sits right in the.
That's definitely out now.
The band and the choir rooms have slanted roofs, correct?
They're technically, yeah, the pitch structure, yes, yeah, correct.
Where is the drainage from the roofs? Where's that going?
We're gonna catch it in a roof drain that's connected in underground. There's actually an existing storm that sits right outside the addition there that we're collecting everything and putting it into the existing storm.
Where does that storm go?
Goes east, so there's a connection, there's one that comes out of the lobby, and there's a manhole right there, and then it goes to the parking lot, and I believe south.
Got it.
It is exciting. I mean, the band choir edition will be extremely nice, and the glazing upgrades and the finishing off the auditorium, we're really looking, walking today, just trying to picture the size of it. We're really looking forward to it.
Any additional questions?
When would this project be finished?
Right now, we're targeting, around Christmas time.
Okay. So when students come back after winter break next year, it should be available. It's great.
Right. Maybe. Maybe. No promising. Manage expectations.
And what'd you say that bid package you're looking at right at 5 million?
Yeah, you're right at 5 with the agency. Yeah.
And that's running the numbers with the presidential and jobs committee, it still puts us right in that 42 million realistically budget. So kind of keeping it within that overall project budget there.
Any other questions? Allison?
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Mathis?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Definitely yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
All right, now do I have a motion to consider approval of the FFE bid documents?
So moved.
Second.
Who takes this one?
Well, Mrs. Ham will first, and then we have Monique
Yes,
here.
so I'm gonna bring up Monique Taylor from Liggett. She is the designer that has been working, on our FF&E package.
Can I
Monique's,
explain what FF&E stands for?
it is furnishings, fixtures, and equipment.
Equipment.
Yes. FF&E. So just a couple things, before Monique gets up here and kind of talks about the process and what we're looking at in particulars. When we had originally done the budget for FF&E, we were at 1.5 million. When we reduced scope, because we were concerned about the budget, and we had obviously terrific first bid numbers that came in because we were under budget by over $4 million. We were able to add additional scope. So when we went down to $1 million, that did not include the furnishings in the 7-8 cafeteria. That did not include Area J, which is the library, life skills areas, those classrooms on that side of the building. Originally, we did not have the scope of the main office in that. We had taken that out. We were able to add that scope back. We had the counselor suite, we were looking at leaving the counselors where they were. We were able to add 3 classrooms in that area, which helped in addition to that. But that required us to move the counselors, and we needed some additional furnishings there. So we're looking at a budget of approximately 1.5 million, but given the additional scope and the additional square footage, it kind of correlates with that. So when you look at that number, that is why it is different than what we had originally budgeted. But Monique's gonna come up here and kind of talk about what we're looking at in the process and who we're hoping is going to bid on our package.
Before Monique goes up and does that, can you make sure you outline the process of how you got feedback from the staff, so you?
Sure. So, last November, I believe it was, we sent out a survey, November, December. We sent out a survey asking individuals, do you want more group setting tables? Do you want more individual seating options? What is it that you need for your classrooms? There were specific content areas, for instance, like art, business, science, that needed some particular specialty items. Those individuals, we worked directly through either the teachers or through the department heads, like in science, to pick out those specific items. For instance, we have a couple biology rooms that are still staying where they're at on the first floor. They are very small. They've had these very small tables for a number of years, and it's not very conducive for the lab portion of their class. So Monique was able to help us find these octagon lab tables that we're able to put in there, and so they can use it both for lecture and lab space. In the, what I call the new science wing, which isn't so new anymore, but newer than the old classes, we had built-in lab space, but we had big bulky desks that weren't very flexible in moving around and working on group projects. So we came up with a great solution called the essay desk, which is on casters, it's mobile, it's got a large tablet that goes across it, but then it can be moved around the room easily, but then they can go to the lecture. So for those content areas, we work directly with either the teachers or with the department heads. Art, each of those 3 art teachers in the high school teach a little bit different type of media, so they needed different types of things. But we had all 4 teachers, the one that's going to be our 7-8 art teacher, and then the 3 high school teachers all agreed on a common kind of table, which was wonderful, common kind of seating, and then we were able to purchase pieces that specifically worked with whatever medias they focus on. So, yeah, we got a lot of feedback, and I think the furnishings are gonna be really wonderful. There were people that wanted more collaborative tables, but given the COVID environment that we're in, we needed seating options that could be broken apart until we get past this COVID hurdle, whenever that is going to be. So Monique found some really interesting, they're kind of, what shape are they, Monique?
Diamond.
It's like a diamond shaped desks that have actually a lot of space. You wouldn't believe it, the way they look. But they have great places for Chromebooks, books, and places that you can have notebooks to take notes. But then they can also go together in collaborative shapes so that you have that feel of having large tables. But if we are in a situation, you know, going into next year, like we are now, they can be broken apart and we can do more individual options for health and safety reasons. So yeah, we have a lot of really great pieces that are selected, and I'll let Monique talk about the bid process and how we picked items that were a basis of design, but then you have to pick alternates as well, otherwise it's not a bid. So we had to pick 3 manufacturers, so we don't really know right now what we're going to get, but all the pieces that are from the basis of design are really great and we're really comfortable with, so. I'll let Monique talk.
Thanks so much for having me tonight. So John kind of almost told everything I was gonna say, so I'll just add a little bit to it. But what we wanted to do, we wanted to go out to bid, we wanted to give everybody, you know, local dealers, bigger dealers, everybody who was interested to be able to bid on it. So typically, traditionally, you know, a bid package would go out as an entire bid. We broke it up into 3 bid categories, like you will see in your documents or what was emailed out. We did classrooms, we did collaborative spaces, and then we did offices. So what that does is it breaks it up, and it gives the smaller dealerships more opportunity to be competitive and not have a skin in the game, essentially. great, bid staff, and we work with everybody, so how Jen was explaining, so say for like the classroom table, right, so we looked at, a lot of manufacturers, we actually, got demos at the tables, we went to the market, we looked at some tables, we put chromebooks on there, we put notebooks on there to make sure that there is enough space for it. And they're a different shape than what we're used to, right? It's not a rectangular shape, or a square, but they do work well collaboratively and you can pull them apart. They're on casters, they lock, so the students are able to kind of create and maneuver within their own space. So we work with that. We also make sure that all the dealers can bid on a particular manufacturer. Some manufacturers, some dealers can't get. So we really went through that process of talking to them and making sure that everybody has an equal opportunity. So that was really great. Also, I'm trying to think what else. So to come back, we also have, like John was explaining, those specialty areas where we work with the teachers. Those areas, because it's so specific, not a lot of manufacturers makes something like that. So the way we broke it out in the bid is that that is the miscellaneous tab. So then dealers can add that to their bid packages essentially. So they do not have, it is just the basis of design. There's no alternates for those areas, but that's okay because there is no comparison. So that's the only thing that we changed a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, we're super excited. In regards to color, you know, we looked at the amazing terrazzo that we have there. That's gonna be there forever. We work with the green color in there. We also wanted to bring the school color in, so when we walk in, we know, and it's there. So, I know some of you have seen the color selections. We haven't, included them in the bid documents just yet, because like John was saying, we don't know what manufacturer we're gonna get. So depending on who we're getting, we'll work through with them, but we are allowing an allowance for the fabric or the finishes in there, so we know there's not gonna be any surprises or anything like that. Yeah, is there anything else I missed? I don't think so. You guys have any questions? Super exciting.
What's the timeline, you know, you go out to bid, what's the timeline then?
So yeah, so we're gonna go out to bid on Wednesday, hopefully, if you guys approve. And then, bids will come back on March 30th, and then phase 1 would be installed, by August of this year, and then phase 2 would be in January of next year. And I believe the only phase 2 would be the Learning Center, and Mod A, if I remember correctly.
And Mod A is the addition.
Yeah, 10-12 lane.
Well, and then probably B, right? The classrooms that are in B.
I think
No,
we
they
could.
thought they might have those earlier.
Yeah, B we have in, phase 1 right now. We can always shift it around with the dealers, as long as we're just not 6 months apart where they have to store it, but we can put that in the language in the pre-bid, that if we have to change, we can, change that out. And then of course, if there's any questions, you know, we'll address them or concerns, so during the addendum or questions.
So if I just review that time, we go out Wednesday, we approve them.
Yep.
And they come back to us on the 30th.
Yes,
So they'll be available for us to approve at our April meeting?
Yes,
hopefully it's not April 1st.
April 12th.
Oh, awesome, okay. Because the reason why I say this, we just want to review and make
Right.
sure that what they bid, and that usually takes a little bit, because sometimes they do give us some stuff we did not ask for, so, but yeah, April 12th would be.
Well, and I wanna give Monique credit that I know she will not brag about herself. So, there's been a huge issue, and for anybody that's out in, you know, at home listening to this on Zoom. So if you ever walked into our high school and maybe you didn't notice it, but there's these terrazzo floors, and terrazzo is stone, and then it's colored. So, for whatever reason in 1957, 58, they decided they wanted to have green stone everywhere. So when you go in the high school gym, there's green glazed tile. When you go into, you know, anywhere else, they have green stone floors. Why green? I have no clue, but that's what it is. So terrazzo will be here after all of us are gone, all our great grandkids are gone. It'll be here for a long time, okay? So there's really no way to get rid of that floor in an economical manner. So you had to figure out a way to incorporate it. But we wanted to put our school colors into this as well. Monique found this cloth that has silver, gold, black, and this green in it. And so she was able to tie it all together, so we'll be able to have the school colors, but not want to throw up next to the green terrazzo. That was a big, I mean, believe me, this is a months-long argument stressor on how are we gonna deal with this green terrazzo. And so she found a way, and it's
say it, like, it's really gonna look good with that floor. I've been
It's
trying
gonna
to
be
convince
okay.
Dr. Asplin that, you know, we can't keep this floor, we can't, there's just no way, no, and it's gonna come together beautifully.
Yeah,
It
so
really is.
that's been
She's done an amazing job.
a very long argument that really wasn't, I just like, I don't even know why you're arguing, we're not doing it, but she wanted to cover up the terrazzo, I'm like, no. I'm like, it's terrazzo, it's not going anywhere, we're gonna keep it, it's paid
Basically, if
for,
you
it's
have a
permanent.
13-year-old daughter that keeps asking for something and you keep saying no, I was the 13-year-old daughter and John was just very calm, no, we're not doing it, no. I'd bring it up 2 weeks later, no, you're keeping that floor, like.
It was not optional.
So, no, it was not optional, but Monique did come up with some great ideas.
Well, it's a great team, so we all came up with it together, and I just, if we take a couple steps back, the renderings that Brian and Lee were showing earlier. So another thing I wanna point out too, which is really great, is that the furniture that we selected, you know, together, it's not just hard surfaces, right, like polys or, we don't have a poly in here, but, there's also soft seating in there, so when you look at Lombard's cafeteria, if you guys have seen that, you know, so it kind of breaks up the space a little bit too, and it gives the kids and the students more unique spaces. So that's what we're thinking of bringing the fabrics and bringing in some colors, some moves, and some textures, so when they're in these spaces, they really feel comfortable, you know, they can relax and, you know, kind of take a mental break from class.
Any other questions? Allison?
Okay, Mr. Beal?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Surratt?
Aye.
Hannigan?
Aye.
Lyon? Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Outside?
Do we have mid?
We have hit that magical number of 9 o'clock. The next set of items are all going to be discussion. Does anybody need a break, or do we need to just push on through?
Lead roll.
They shouldn't take that one.
No, lead roll.
All right, focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First up is an update on the status of learning and in-person learning.
So I have 2 items just to bring to your attention. So one, we're very concerned, and Courtney Canute has been doing a wonderful job. She's sitting out in the audience. She's had to put in way more hours than she should. And we're having some great deal of difficulty with all the requirements from IDPH for how we have to exclude people. But we're over 400 people we've had to exclude since we've been back in school in the last 2 weeks. So, we're trying to push against some of the reasons why we have to do it, from IDPH, but we're not getting a lot of flexibility, or actually none. And then we're trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can here to educate people as to how to, you know, maneuver through the system. None of those reasons have originated from the school, okay? So, it's a big issue that we're trying to work through, and we'll get better at it through education, but that's a big area of concern for us right now. We've had 11 staff members and 400, I think, students that we've had to exclude through the COVID protocol. So we're only 2 weeks in, we know we'll get better, but that's a concern. And then second of all, we sent out a notice to parents last week saying that we're going to assume that you're gonna be in person 4th term. The reason we did it that way was we find a lot of people get confused and they don't answer the questions correctly, and they come to the school very angry because they said, I signed up for one thing when no they didn't. And so we wanna make it as easy to be in person as humanly possible. And so the only way that you need to notify the school for 4th term is if you plan to be remote. And as of this morning, quietest buildings I've ever been in, it's crazy. Like, there's just, it's almost silent. And that's not always a good thing, so I'm not saying that completely is good, but it's definitely getting used to, because of the mask. It just seems like everybody's so much more subdued. I will say at lunch, I view it as a definite positive. I think it's nice that kids talk, but now they talk it so you can actually talk to other people. And it's not a cacophony of sound when you go into a cafeteria. But it is definitely not the same. But I do see a lot of happy faces, and kids seem to be very happy, teachers seem to be very happy. And yeah, it's stressful, but whatever we're gonna do this year is gonna be stressful. So I think that this has been a very positive change for us.
I have a question for you concerning the forced quarantine students, as how that pertains to the unexcused attendance numbers that we saw. Is there a relationship there? Are the kids that are being forced into quarantine?
They would all be
not getting online remotely, or?
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to, but I would assume those students would be excused because they're already in the COVID, but I'd have to go back and check and see how we're marking some of those, but I don't know.
That's a good question, because we had inconsistency in the way we tracked absences before this started.
Right. So, for the month of February, well, and so, the month of March will give us a much better view of that, because February still had 15 attendance days that were all remote, well, or hybrid. So, next month will be a much better sense of that, but I can try to get an answer for February as to where that breaks out.
And if students are being, forced into quarantine, we wanna make sure that, it's reminded that, no, you still have to
Right.
participate.
Right.
We're sending you home, but, we still need you in attendance.
Right, and another issue we have found, and we've had to tighten up some of our procedures, is we have found that there are some, I will say parents, it's not students, parents that have found that they believe that they can set their own hybrid schedule where they come 2 days a week and don't come 3 days a week. And so, we've communicated with them that you're gonna go full remote if you continue with this. Like, no, it's a hardship on the teacher to have to put you into the Seesaw or the Google Classroom platform, and then pull you out and then because it's a different way you set up the student, for that day. So, we're really trying to educate folks that, no, if you've made a commitment to be at school, you really need to be at school. Obviously, if your child's sick, then don't come. But we already had procedures in place for that anyway. So that's been a little bit of a hiccup, but it seems like that's being addressed and not really, a pervasive problem.
For this one, or maybe, Ms. Keith, it might be best directed to her, kind of in a roundabout way, related to e-learning. Do we still have faculty trying to get, the vaccine? And is there anything that we can do to help facilitate that?
Well, I will let Courtney answer what we can answer, but know that we're bound by HIPAA.
I understand that.
So,
That's-
I've had a lot of people self-report to me, oh, here it comes again.
In the best way that we can answer that.
Right, yeah, I've had several self-report to me that they've been able to get their second vaccine, so I'm very happy about that, but Courtney may have some information she can share.
Do I need to go to the microphone?
Can you hear me, guys?
I can, but I don't know.
The microphone will be turned on in a minute.
It's on.
So I will say that I do have a growing number of staff who constantly are communicating with me to take them off of the list to receive that vaccine through the district that we offer through the health department. I do think, I agree with Dr. Escalon, there has been a large number who are able to get them through Walgreens or Hy-Vee. And so, I believe a lot of that is coming from them receiving their doses, which is a great thing. I have not heard when from the health department as to when it will be offered for staff, but I do believe that they are able to get them also right now.
And I do know from a lot of absences that we had after staff got their second vaccine, that was another way we found out there was mass waves of people getting it, because we had a lot of folks who, after I got my second one, I was sick. So, I mean, I thank those that tried to come the next day. I mean, it's tough. That they really powered through, and some just couldn't, and I totally get that. But we also know that, through that a lot, I mean, a very large, percentage of our staff has received their second vaccine.
and we're getting feedback from, because one of the concerns when we moved to in-person or from our remote families about what education would look like for them. Are we getting feedback from them about how that's working?
We still are, I mean, we get some through that remote learning email, and, you know, through the, individual teacher communication, speaking with principals and things, so we're in good contact with those parents.
Any other questions? Next up, do I have a motion to consider approval of the 2021-2022 school calendar? This is the second reading, so this will be approval.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
There were no recommended changes from last month.
With no recommended changes from last month, were there any questions? Allison?
Walters?
Aye.
Mathis?
Aye.
Flanagan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
All right, next up is the discussion of the TRS 457 plan. Mrs. Ham.
And the next three items, so I'm gonna go pretty briefly for all of these. TRS notified, all districts at the end of February that in March, school boards around the state needed to approve their new 457 plan for TRS annuitants. So this literally came out of nowhere. Nobody knew at all what was happening. There was immediate chatter around the state between superintendents and school business officials as to what this all meant. So if you're not familiar with what a 457 plan is, a 457 plan is very similar to a 403B, which is the nonprofit sector 401k plan. So you can put money in pre-tax dollars for retirement savings. 457 works in a very similar manner, but it was designed for municipal employees, particularly municipal employees that were elected. Okay. Municipal employees that were elected. And the difference between the two plans are, with a 403B, you can't start taking contributions till you're 59 and a half disbursements from that plan. With a 457, as soon as you break service with whatever entity you set that plan up with, you can start taking distributions. So those are the difference in the plans. What was concerning and a bit perplexing, and is still a bit perplexing, as to why was TRS setting up their own 457 plan, which is a mechanism that we have the ability to set up here, and I have since filed that paperwork so that our staff will be able to participate in a 457 as well as a 403B if they so choose. But why was TRS getting into this business of managing this 457 fund? There has not been a direct answer yet. What we do know is they've kind of pulled back their requirement to have every district approve this plan in March. They said that they didn't roll it out with enough information, didn't give the districts enough time to respond to this, and not only did they not give enough information, they really didn't give any information. What we're assuming is this is a response to Tier 3 certified staff members who are going to have reduced benefits at some point based on the way the Tier 3 law was set up. Our thought is at some point they're going to ask districts to make contributions on their behalf into Tier 3 because they are not eligible for the same type of benefits as Tier 1 and Tier 2 individuals, but none of that has been laid out for the districts. So with quite a bit of pushback, TRS basically said, we'll put this on hold and you can approve it at a later date when we can get some more information to you. What is a little scary for somebody, and I'll say it since I'm a member of TRS, is the idea of giving a large amount of potential money each year to TRS, anywhere between $19,000 and $26,000 are the maximums that you can contribute depending on your age, and you have literally no control over the fund. So when you set up a 403B or you set up a 457 with a financial advisor, there are decisions that you get to make in terms of investing that money. This will all be given to TRS. TRS will make all the decisions and they will manage that fund. So there's a lot of information that we need to find out, that all districts need to find out, and we're hoping that's coming, but in the next few months, you may be, in essence, forced to pass a resolution to allow for these contributions. It was not optional, it was mandatory. So when I have more information, I'll share it with you, but that's what's happening with TRS 457 plans.
That's it.
That's it.
We don't know.
So you're told we should approve something today, but now we don't have to.
Correct.
Well, so yeah, so I was given an email 2 weeks ago. That said, hey, every school district needs to approve this in March. Most of the times, we're just like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do it. Well, like, literally, like, every superintendent was like, wait, no, you know, like, I'm not approving this, I don't even know what it is. And so there was a ton of pushback, as Sam said, from the business office community and from the superintendents, who pushed back to TRS and said, we feel really uncomfortable approving this. You know, you're telling us we have to do this, then we're gonna have to start directing funds, but we don't even know what it is. This isn't okay. And so, originally, this was to be put on the agenda as a approval, but we thought we better put it on the agenda just to give you a heads up of, hey, this is out there, we don't really know what it is yet. And I based my next comments only on my collective experience, so don't say this is gonna happen, but I'm just telling you, my assumption is, when they make you put this in, at some point, they're then gonna say, oh, by the way, we're gonna start moving the pension costs over to the school district. Like, that's the next step.
I was just gonna say, under whose authority are they able to do this?
The General
Because-
Assembly would be the one that would, they had, if they said, they've already established tier 3, okay? And Luke, help me remember, was it 2017?
I think so.
Yeah. They established tier 3, but they never established the rules to tell you what tier 3 was. So, January 1 of 2011, they established tier 2. So anybody that started after January 1st, 2001, anybody that started on or after January 1st, 2011, is a tier 2 TRS employee, okay? They've never established when tier 3 starts, who it is. When they started it, when they brought it up, they said, well, tier 2 people might become tier 3 people. Okay, I don't know what that means. Right now, we are what's called a defined benefit people. We have a defined benefit. Our benefits are defined by percentage of our last best 4 years. Well, what they wanna move to is a defined contribution. Say, okay, well, you're gonna give this much, and then what you get at the end is like a 401k. You know? So, they're moving in that direction, but there's some problems with that, because like tier 2 people, they can hold till they're 67. Well, if it's a defined contribution, then it's your money, you can retire when? Like whenever you feel like it, right? Like there's no vesting. If all of a sudden it's your money that they're managing for you, so you know, there's a lot of problems with this, but it just felt like they were trying to ram something down our throat. And people push back, but I'm waiting to see what the next step is. And my guess is, at some point in the near future, they're gonna start reigniting that discussion of employer share being moved to the school district, not the state.
So is a 457 a voluntary program?
It is, well, so yes, for us, it is voluntary right now. Anyone can contribute to that. You can contribute up to $19,000 a year in both a 403B and a 457, which is pre-tax. And then once you hit age 50, you can make catch-up contributions for up to $26,000 in each fund. So for some of our employees, this is a really great benefit, because that's all pre-tax dollars. So people can pick and choose the plans that they want, you know, here. But they also get to make the decisions on what kind of funds, what kind of risk they're taking when they sit down with their financial advisor to set up these plans. With the TRS plan, TRS makes all those decisions. So you're basically saying, here's my money, I hope you do okay with it.
But if it's voluntary, and let's say we were forced to vote on it, we could advise the teacher don't do it, correct?
Correct. But we don't know if there's at some point going to be a requirement that these tier 3 individuals make contributions, or if the district makes contributions on behalf of them. So this is all addressing this tier 3 issue that's really undefined at this point for the districts.
Sounds like this is a backdoor for the state to get what they want without actually passing the legislation, because they can't get it passed.
Potentially, and this is Sam is highlighting the biggest concern we have as school business people, because, you know, I'm a school business official, she's a school business official. TRS exists only for a defined benefit plan. That's the only thing they do. And so now that they're now becoming H&R Block, or, you know, somebody that's like, now give me your money on this complete other thing. TIA crap, yeah, I mean, it's just like, this is completely opposite of what they've been before. And so, yes, they have an investment strategy, and yes, they did all of those things, but it was for a very different model. And so now we're very concerned that this is going a completely different direction. And maybe it's a good thing, but there's been no information behind it, so it just makes us very nervous, because it was almost just like, here, we told you in 2 weeks, you have to pass it, let's do it, and we became very concerned, because that's not typically how TRS asks us to do things. So we wanted to make you aware of it. So if it comes down the pike in the future, next month, 3 months from now, a year from now, we go, hey, we have to vote on this, but now we have more information. We just wanted there to be this prelude so that you understood. I mean, that's great, right? Like, that's the other thing, like, the board must approve it, really? Then what's the point of even having to vote for it?
Right.
If you have to approve it.
Miss Sam, have you actually, I mean, with all your free time, done any projections of what it looks like if we have to start?
The cost shift?
Yeah.
I can do that for next month.
So basically, it's 6% of your TRS payroll.
I can run it, I mean, there have been different models, you know, there's been conversations over the years, 0.5% per year, 1%, you know, up until the state's contributions, so I'll run some different models just to show what 0.5%, 1%, 2%, I can't imagine they'd shift more than 2% per year, so.
Well, I mean, realistically, there's districts that wouldn't even be able to afford the 0.5%,
No.
if we're being honest, and so, I mean, that's the reality. And that's why they haven't been able to push that shift, is because districts literally cannot afford it. But I'm just curious what that could possibly look like, just so that we have numbers in our head.
Sure. And the other issue with these tier 3 individuals is that their defined benefit, whatever that looks like, is not going to be enough to exclude them from Social Security. Well, currently, we're not paying Social Security on any of those individuals. So that question needs to get resolved as well, and that could be an additional cost for us if all of a sudden they qualify for Social Security. So we could be forced to pay into a defined benefit for that, or I'm sorry, a 457 plan, as well as paying into Social Security.
Which we have access to on our property tax levy, but that would necessitate in many districts, hopefully not ours, but you never know, a property tax increase, because you gotta find that money from somewhere.
All right. This is the fun part of the meeting. All right. Any other questions? All right, next item is discussion on the refinancing of the 2014 exits.
So up until today, we had some really good news. Stiefel, Nicholas had called us, and it's not bad news, it's just not as good news as we had hoped. Stiefel, Nicholas had called us and said, the bond markets are doing some really interesting things right now. We think we have a way that we can save you $24,000 a year on your 2014 A bonds if you refinance before they're callable in 2024. So we're like, $24,000 is $24,000, so rushed around, got a bunch of information. We were getting ready to do our S&P call this week and get everything together. We were gonna talk about it tonight. You were gonna approve it on hopefully April 12th. And Kevin Hyde called us today and said the markets have taken a very different turn, and it is no longer financially feasible or lucrative for the district to go ahead and refinance at this time.
Interest rates are going up.
So, yeah. So unfortunately, in that very short window of the last week and a half, fortunes have changed, and we're just gonna stick with what we have, but.
Well, we think, but if the interest rates suddenly plummet, it could go back, it's probably not gonna happen. But I'm just saying, there's a tiny window where we could come back next month and go, oh yeah, we're able to do it. Probably not.
Probably not, but it's a nice thought.
We were gonna be
do I have a motion to consider approval of the quote for the Chromebook purchase?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we've purchased a lot of Chromebooks in the last year. Kind of our last group of individuals that have very old devices are kids that are 8th grade to seniors. Those devices, are malfunctioning, we've had a lot of issues with them. So it's at the point where we have ESSER 2 money that we really need to replace those devices. We have 600 devices from kindergarten and 1st grade that are gonna be repurposed next year. And then we're asking tonight to have the authority to purchase 900 additional devices so that in essence, everyone in our district will have a device that is less than 2 years old at this point. And a couple months ago, you approved the purchase of iPads. So next year, our kindergarten and 1st graders are gonna be moving towards iPads, and then everyone else from 2nd grade up will be using Chromebooks. We had 3 bids. Our lowest bid actually was from, our local entity, OSI, for $315,000. We were told in a meeting, a tech meeting we were at, last week, that we probably wouldn't see these devices until October, and Dell is saying they will ship in 5 weeks. So we should have them, processed and ready to be deployed for the start of the next school year.
Questions? Allison?
Hodges?
Aye.
Hennigan?
Aye.
Lyon? Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Murphy?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
All right, next up, we have, do I have a motion to consider approval of the Iowa-Illinois Food Cooperative Agreement?
So moved.
Second.
And this is Mr. Davis, I believe.
Yep.
So basically, the co-op agreement is a 3-year agreement. It has an automatic renewal on the 4th year. It is a agreement that we are in with 14 other schools. To give you a little idea what happens on a yearly basis, we send out a bid as a group, so we get together and we determine how much of a certain item that we're gonna use. We send that out to bid to several different food distributors, and then we choose the best price. As of last year, unfortunately, Kohl's was the only distributor that even responded back. A lot of the distributors are getting out of that business, just because of logistics of being able to provide to such a large group, amongst other things, I'm sure. So we've used Kohl's. I personally, used Kohl's in the past, even when I wasn't with the district, for the items that we provide for, school. I think they do a very solid job, there's some specialty items that they don't have, but I think as far as K through 12, food service, they do a good job. The co-op, I think does a good job as well at doing internal audits, making sure that we have, that our distributor is upholding their bargain as far as pricing. We do price checks on a monthly basis, so that is what you have in front of you.
Questions?
Our redesigning the kitchen and having things made differently than we have in the past, does that affect the items that
No, I
we're
think that
carrying?
our ingredients, and what we'll be using, Kohl's will be able to provide, if that's what you're asking, as far as
But we will
ingredient
order
list and
different
whatnot, and raw product and whatnot. Yes, I don't have a concern that they wouldn't be able to meet those needs.
Explain,
Yes.
explain food cooperative, what do you mean by that?
Well, basically, it's a group of 14 different schools. And I mean, basically, what we do is we set out, okay, so for instance, we're gonna use, let's just say, chicken strips. So we say, okay, well, we need 15,000 cases of chicken strips, okay, that we're gonna use as a co-op throughout the whole year, and then Kohl's or whoever gets the bid, they guarantee that we are
getting that product. Now, if something happens, for example, where they don't have the product, which given this last year has happened here and there due to shutdowns and whatnot, they will give us another product of similar quality and match the pricing and whatnot. Sometimes you lose, if it's a commodity product, you could lose the commodity dollar, but they'll get you the pricing. I hope that answers a little bit.
14 school districts that are, I'm assuming, in our area.
Yeah, it's mainly the Quad City area.
We leverage bigger numbers to get lower prices.
Yeah, buying power.
Any other questions?
So you said that this auto renews? So if we took no action, it renews, otherwise we would take it.
We're up for renewal now. So it's for 3 years, and then the 4th year, I believe it's written, the 4th year is an automatic renewal.
Yeah, and then the way bidding laws work, you can't do that twice, so that's why we have to take action.
Do we have any other options?
We do, the Peoria
Yes,
area.
yes, the short answer is yes, we do. Have those been resourced? No.
I will tell you this, I have experience in both co-ops. Peoria area co-op and Illinois Iowa co-op are basically the same. I mean, the entry fees are basically the same, they both deal with coals, it's just geography. I mean, if we went to Peoria co-op, which we could absolutely do, we probably wouldn't save any more, spend any more.
I've personally developed some pretty good relationships with the people in our co-op, so I haven't personally seen the need to switch.
Is there any difference in the quantity or quality of food?
They're both Kohl's wholesale, who's gonna bid on all of it.
So Kohl's has a monopoly over the food that we get.
Absolutely.
Yes, they absolutely do.
Well, that's a great opportunity for somebody, I guess.
If you can provide it. And I think that's why a lot of other distributors have gotten out of that game because, you know, whether it's storage, whether it's where their distribution centers are, and being able to hit everybody in the co-op. But I don't think this is an uncommon thing to see right now, a lot of food distributors getting out of that whole game. But this is kind of Kohl's bread and butter. K through 12 is kind of their bread and butter, or hospitals or whatnot.
Any other questions?
But we do, I mean, we do send out that bid. I mean, we're not tied to Kohl's, you know, somebody comes back and they can offer us that service and those pricing, and as a co-op, we definitely would entertain that.
Any other questions?
Doesn't appear to be any other options.
Well, it's just so, if we could go out and bid all of it on our own, okay? You'll have to go on a little bit of faith on this, is what I'm telling you. If we bid it, I'm 98% sure or more, Kohl's would win it, and we'd pay more than if we were the co-op. And that's just reality. Unfortunately. Probably. With the co-op, you're gonna get more bids than if we did it on our own, I will say that. So there's more of it. If we combined Peoria, Illinois, Iowa, now you might have something where you might get some more bidders from some other places.
If there's no competition,
It's very, yeah.
they can charge what they want.
They've been pretty good about keeping prices pretty low. Our concern is sometimes they haven't always had the most variety, so it's difficult finding stuff that you might like. When Matt's really good about trying to vary the menu. And, you know, that's a limitation there. But they're
Now,
good.
and to vary it a little bit, you know, we can better utilize some of our commodity dollars with like the fresh fruits and vegetable program and whatnot. There are some things that Kohl's is very strong at, and some things that they're not very strong at. Some of those, you know, the dollars that were allotted for commodity usage can be put to fresh fruits and vegetables rather than purchasing that from Kohl's.
questions? Allison?
Hannigan?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Surratt?
Aye. Next up, we have a report on negotiation. Member Lyon.
Well, we've been making a report like this for 10 months. We started the negotiations April 1st, 2020. We've met 33 times. The previous contract, which expired at the end of July, we met 13 times to reach agreement on that, and I thought that was a lot. We can still continue talking. We're meeting again this Wednesday afternoon in this very room. Every time I walk in, I'm positive we're gonna come to agreement. Every time I've been very disappointed. We have not been able to come to agreement yet. I think our number of items that we haven't reached agreement is lower, but they're very serious issues. And I'm gonna come in Wednesday, optimistic we have closure on these items. And I hope I don't leave disappointed this Wednesday.
Thank you. Next up, we move on to personnel. Do I have, a motion to consider approval of job descriptions?
So moved.
Second.
Rodney and Nick are on a roll. Questions about the job descriptions?
There was a question in part of these discussions about having job descriptions posted so people can see them. We're gonna make movement on that?
Yes. Yes. Well, so, Amy is currently overseeing, the overhaul of the back end of our webpage. So our webpage will look largely the same, but some variation differences. Once that process is done, then we'll move into, posting those job descriptions. Yeah, I'd say within the next.
I'm halfway through them, they're there already, so.
That's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Just for everybody to know, the jobs that we're gonna be approving are the Assistant Director of Special Ed, the Administrative Assistant for Finance and Operation, the Administrative Assistant for Grant Management and Compliance, Paraprofessional.
Yeah, so that one, we're revising it because we wanna make sure they're all just paraprofessionals. So not substantive use changes there. And, the assistant director is, I'm only asking that that we fill it for a year. And really, that person's just gonna be the person we expect to replace Dr. Rashad, because she's retiring at the end of next year. And, the job descriptions, the other two are within this office to, once again, as we shuffle people around, try and more closely reflect the jobs that they're doing. And so the, finance and operation ones will be tweaked a little bit. And then, the special ed, assistant is also gonna take on some grant management that we had some other folks doing. We're trying to load balance, to get work more even. So, pretty much what they are. So there's no new jobs in there other than maybe the assistant director, although that's a revised old job description that we had when we were on board.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so they're not new jobs, they're revised job descriptions.
Right, it's an ever challenging, task to try to make sure that we match the job description with the work being done. When the state adds on different work, and then the feds add on different work, and then we're moving folks around, and it's just, I will say this, to the outsider, it may look like, oh my gosh, they're doing it again. I promise anybody out there, every school district should be doing this all the time. Our folks are doing a great job staying on top of it and trying to make sure it's accurate. So it's really an all, it's always gonna be going. If we went several months without them, that's when you need to be concerned.
Any other questions? Allison?
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye.
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Mr. Buckles?
Aye.
Hennigan?
Aye.
Next up, do I have a motion to consider approval of the resolution reference the dismissal of a professional educator licensed PEL employee, Stephen Hughey?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any additional questions? Allison?
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Mr. Buckles?
Aye.
Hennigan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Next, do I have a motion to consider approval of the personnel report?
So moved.
Second.
Any additional questions here? Allison?
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Walters?
Aye.
Mr. Buckles?
Aye.
Hennigan?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Grievance update, Dr. Esplin.
No grievance.
FOIA requests.
I have 3. Foley in Mansfield was completed, they're asking for employee records, Student Press Law Center for freedom of expression policies, and the Chicago Tribune and ProPublica on discipline records with regard to police assists and arrest details. We submitted all.
Okay. Comments by the board, starting on my right per usual, Member Walters.
My first comment is more of a recommendation as we look at and move to, well, I guess, we've done for a while virtual and live streaming. If we could kindly have a company come in to address the sound system, that would probably improve the quality of everyone in attendance as well as virtually. Also, on a more serious note, if all the families, watching, listening, after the fact, safety at the schools, with drop-off and pickup, if families can please pay attention to the signage, not park in front of the schools to drop off kids, students during the school hours. Try not to block access for the buses, because it's just going to backlog the roadways for vehicles getting in and out. I've watched it at all of the schools. I'm not sure if it's a possibility for the district to work with the city to even paint lines to try and encourage vehicles to not block, the access areas. But it is a huge issue. I've watched GPD out, patrolling areas, but I understand that. We've only been in school for 2 weeks now, but it is a big problem and it creates huge visibility issues for students. So I wanna see everyone safe, go to school safe and come home safe, so we all need to work together. The building staff is doing the best that they can, but we need to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Rodriguez.
No comment.
Member Sharpie.
My comment is probably more of a question. I saw that there was an email sent out today concerning graduation, and I'd like to hear some clarification on that.
Sure, well, and Mr. Houston, if I miss some of this, then I will, please correct me.
Sure.
So, the CDC and the IDPH, have some restrictions on numbers of people that can be at the ceremony, so, we will be doing some hybrid of in-person and virtual in terms of taking it so that everybody can see the same thing like we did last year now, whether it's inside or outside, that's yet to be determined. Some of that will be dependent on the weather. And trying to fit as many people into whatever space it is. So let's take if we went to the football stadium, okay? Given current guidelines, which they could change, given current guidelines, we have seating capacity there somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,300, where you can only have, is it 20%?
20%.
20%. So you have like 471 people in there. Well, we have 208, depending on who shows up, early grads, late grads, we have 250 grads somewhere there. So that would leave another 180 people that could come in. So that's obviously problematic. And then if we wanted to have the band, speakers, board, then that becomes even harder. So if we wanna put these in groups of people, well, if we did it last year, like we did at the field house, you know, we can bring in bigger numbers of people and have the parents come in and watch their kids do it, and try to determine which is the best venue, given the restrictions that we have right now. So if we were a smaller high school, we could probably fit everybody out there, but we're, you know, we have a lot more students. So working with the Department of Public Health and trying to find a way to get as many people into the venue as possible, but not breaking rules, and having a ceremony that the students will remember and cherish and really value, is another challenge there. So Mr. Houston put out somewhat of a generic letter saying, hey, we're gonna try to do something, both virtual and in person. We will be sending out another clarification just so people understand some of the barriers that we have to doing a traditional graduation, where you have all the graduates sitting on the football field and having the parents in the stands, and you know, that's gonna be hard, if not impossible, unless we do it in shifts. So, still trying to come up with what's the best solution for that day, but also, everybody needs to understand too, that, let's say, Mr. Houston and his team put together the most fabulous outdoor event, and then it's lightning and rain, now we gotta move it inside too. So, I mean, there's not gonna be a perfect solution. But trying to give these seniors something memorable and something valuable to them is obviously the most important. Did I miss any of the high notes there, Mr. Houston?
No, it's just, when you do get to the numbers game, how do you tell families who gets to come and who doesn't get to come? And so that's a very difficult thing to try to manage as you forecast that. The other thing that needs to be taken into consideration is the quality of a performance. It's hard for the seniors now to even know what we did last year because they didn't go through it. Talking with some of the sound people and stuff, the sound that comes through that system out there, Rod, you've done the sound system, it's not the greatest sound system in the world. It echoes, the clarity of it for speeches and such, it could be a little difficult, to take. So the quality of the sound, we believe that we put on a pretty good one last year. We'll look at the options, but under the current guidelines, I think you were right. It's just right now where things sit, and then, it's funny that the news opened up tonight after we got here. I listened to the news on some of the parameters that are getting opened up now, so who's to say?
Right, if they opened up where we could have bigger crowds, then I think it's a lot easier to say, let's go outside.
I haven't seen the email letter that's gone out to parents. I just saw some of the feedback after it was sent out.
Right.
And, you know, my concern is, you know, are we flexible in what we're gonna do?
Well,
how are we gonna decide this?
Right, and we put a lot of eyes on that, letter to try to, one, the biggest concern we were getting, and I'm speaking for you, Mr. Houston, but the biggest concern we were getting was people like, when's graduation? So we wanted to make sure people knew we're still committed to the date of Memorial Day weekend. So that parents knew, grandparents knew, whomever, knew what dates to plan to be here for graduation, and then left the wording flexible enough to not really commit to one direction or another, because right now it's kind of hard to do that. But we wanna commit to that date, so that people know, okay, it's that, I believe it's the 30th, isn't it? Yeah. So it's May 30th, I mean, it's gonna be May 30th, it's just, what is it gonna look like? Don't really know. I mean, we were told, how many days ago, this morning? I can't remember anymore. Was it this morning we were told that we could expand the number of people at football games?
11:30.
Track meets?
11:30.
Came out at 11:32.
So, I mean,
How many people can we have football games?
20%. Where before it was 50. So it went from 50 to 470 for us. So, I understand the people that are upset. We tried to just put out a letter that let them know we were holding a date. It's very.
So the actual type of event isn't.
We don't know 100%. Yeah, we don't know. I know everybody's on their last nerve.
Oh, yeah, I get that too.
I'm pretty confident though, whatever he would have put out, somebody would have fired off a reply of, this is terrible. Like, that's where we are. Like, whatever
whatever we say, there's somebody that immediately goes, bad idea, like, that's where we are. So if it sounds like we're a little callous to it, maybe we are, because we're just getting inundated with, this is horrible, and we agree, it's horrible. And I wish I could not have COVID. And that's forcing us to try to remain as flexible as humanly possible without really stating exactly what we're doing, because I guess we're holding out hope that we can have some more flexibility.
Well, the reality is that even if we could have 471 people out there, there's still some indication within some of the guidelines that you still have to have the people 6 feet apart, and there can only be 50 people within so many square feet.
Right.
So it's not just having 471 people congregated on the field, it would also actually mean marking out square feet that allow 50 people 6 feet apart, and then having those squares, I think it's 30 feet apart from each other. So you're talking about 50 people here, 50 people here, right? So it's not as easy as just saying, oh, let's, every other person in a seat or something like that. So there's a lot to go into the decisions, and I just know because we're making them at another institution that I work with too.
Right. Well, and I will want to say too, so last year, we didn't know what we were gonna be doing up until 2 weeks beforehand. And we heard a lot of upset feelings from people then, but after they went through, I think other than one, everybody was very positive about what that ceremony ended up being when they experienced it. That was a very positive experience for those kids and for those parents.
And I would say that's some of the advantages, is that last year you were to pretty much, 4 people come through the door with you. This year, because of the parameters now opened up, they could actually bring, 10 of the most important people with them to share that experience of them getting their diploma. And then some of the good things I heard also was, some parents that said, we didn't have to sit there for 2.5 hours to watch our kid walk across the stage. We actually watched it at home, and we had a viewing party at home where we all sat around together and we watched it together in our own, the confines of our own house, our air conditioning, whatever it was. So there are some advantages, but Dr. Aston's right. This is no different than last year. We're still in a pandemic. It's very difficult to try to manage and do what's best for everyone.
Yeah, so unfortunately or fortunately, depending on where you sit on this, nothing's set in stone yet. We just wanted people to know the date.
Okay.
Just to use it quick. Do we have a few students that went through that experience last year that would be able to provide some input for the seniors this year to share that experience and what it meant to them, whether that be positive or negative?
Yeah.
So that way, they're not just blindly making assumptions.
And I've even gone as far as the parents too, because the parents that went through it spoke so highly of the event, they didn't realize it was formal. I mean, they had a stage, we still had the flowers, and the gowns and everything, so, we can bring in, hopefully, if there's some kids still around, we can actually let them come in and talk to the kids, sure.
I would also add, as a principal of GHS North, that there is significant planning that goes into any ceremony of this size. If you've ever planned a wedding, for example, and you think about that it's March 8th today, we're looking at May 30th. There are so many decisions that have to be made, especially when we have the safety parameters that are also required of us. So there's a lot that needs to be purchased, for example, so the planning really has to happen at this time. And so the planning, we need to know what the plan is to deliver the ceremony that our students very much deserve and make it as special as it can be.
Yeah, because if we do it on the football field, you're gonna have to buy special special chairs, because they're gonna be the arm chairs, not the leg chairs, because those go right through the carpet. Or we have to find a way to get something on the turf to protect the turf. So there's all kinds of little things that people don't think about that, we need to put into the planning like she's.
A lot of manpower.
Okay, Member Hunnigan,
No comment.
Member Phelps.
I would just like to say thank you to all the staff, administration for getting through this. I never in my wildest dreams thought when we went on lockdown, I'll call it, back last March, that I'd still be dealing with this and everything we're dealing with. I thought a couple months and this will be over. I feel this is probably the way we know how we do things has changed forever now. But hats off to all of you and everybody listening of getting us to this point. It is not easy. I get it. There will be some big changes, I hope. But thank you for everything that you're doing. I know it's not normal. I know it's hard. I know you're putting in way more hours and doing way more things than you ever signed up for. I get it, but thank you.
Underline.
Well, I'm gonna speak to a piece that we spent a lot of time on, and that's the building project. I'm just, you can tell, I'm real excited about this. Because by this time next year, we'll have the bulk of our seven, except for the new wing, which won't be finished. Our 712 building be up. Our new elementary schools are already in line. Lombard is in great shape. I just hope that the teachers are enjoying working in the new spaces that they're back. Those people at Churchill don't experience it yet, but soon they'll be in very beautiful spaces at our new campus. And it's just, I hope the parents will get a chance to bring everyone in to see what everything looks like, because it really is giving everyone a good environment. And you add to that the work that Tiffany and her group is working on in the curriculum. I think we're gonna make huge strides in what students are able to do here in our community. I'm just really proud to be part of it, and thank you.
I wanna echo a few of those thoughts and the reality that, for years, we've heard about the deferred maintenance on our buildings and what that meant for a quality school district, and that oftentimes people were making decisions not to purchase houses in Galesburg because why would they do that when they could go to shiny new buildings in other districts and drive the 40 minutes to Galesburg to work? And I think after all is said and done, we're gonna be situated much differently. And I know that the growing pains that we are going through right now, with the addition of the pandemic, seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and I wanna echo my thanks to everyone who has just really went above and beyond the last 12 months. And that to have grace with yourself, right? Patience with yourselves, with your colleagues, with your students, with your families, with each other, because we are coming up on a year, and that is a very long time for us in some ways to be isolated in ways that we had not been previously. I was thinking about the building projects and the fact that because of COVID, we haven't really been able to have receptions at the new buildings to show them off and to have tours and, traditional like ribbon cutting events to say, wow, look at this great, wonderful new building. And I'm hoping at some point we're able to do that and allow our community to see the wonderful changes that have been made in our buildings. So just, if you can hang in there, I'd like to say that there's finally some light at the end of the tunnel. We're hearing better news. So yeah, I just thank you to our administrators and our teachers, our paras, our custodians. I mean, the list goes on for taking care of our buildings and for going the extra mile during this time, and to Courtney for tracking all of that and trying to keep track of all that. So just a round of applause and appreciation. I know that sometimes words just feel meaningless, and I'm sure you'd probably prefer more tangible ways of being appreciated. We would not disagree with you there. All right, any other future agenda items?
Yeah, I have a request, Ms. Sam, could we get a simple report on our electrical? Cause I see Ameren, I see Sol, I just need a little explanation on who we're distributing power through, and are we all, where's our solar at and all that. Just nothing elaborate, but just, it's kinda confusing, cause we got all this solar, but then I'm still seeing Ameren, I'm seeing home field energy and things, so just a little explanation, please.
And I will tell you, just going forward, we'll still see those, all those entities because of how we had to buy power.
Could you explain what they are?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
Okay, any other future agenda items?
Oh,
All right, next meeting, next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, April 12th at 7.
you just barreled through that.
Do I have
It's
a-
an hour.
I know, hey, look to your left. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.